Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. I'll officially call the meeting to order for Tampa Bay Water. It is February 18th, 2019. Our first order of business will be to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And I did want to ask board members, does anyone have a time constraint issue today?
Hopefully, we're done by noon.
Is that a time constraint issue? Or do you?
Yeah, we'd have to leave by probably about 2 o'clock.
Oh, 2 o'clock, okay.
Yeah.
Great. You have county commission business
We got,
today?
Pasco County Fair's opening, and we're supposed to be there.
Very nice, okay. Thank you all very much. We will get started with public comment, and our first speaker today is Robert Hoff. And while he's coming to the podium, I'll just say Tampa Bay Water Board of Directors welcomes comments from the public about any issue or concern. Opinions provide valuable input to the board members. However, we request that public comments be directed to issues not directed personally against a board member or staff member. This provides a mutual respect between the board members and the public. Thank you and welcome.
Hey, Robert Hoff, 140th Avenue, Largo. Did I meet that criteria? I'd like to talk about the wastewater to potable issue. I think primarily I'm going to try to make this short. I don't have a lot of preparation involved here, but it's always been places that do this have least amount of rainfall, such as El Paso. They have like 9 inches of rain per year. San Diego, Los Angeles, they have even less than El Paso does. So I could see maybe the need in that behalf if Florida was in that situation to have that least amount of water that we need to use, absolutely use it. And in this Tampa Bay area, we have about 50 inches of rain per year. So we're really not in that situation. I don't understand why this issue has even come up. In addition, we have climate that we're all looking at changing, and specifically in Australia, they had 1 year's worth of rain in 1 week, about a couple weeks ago. They had crocodiles climbing up trees. Don't forget, they're in the southern hemisphere. That's their summer. Our summer's coming now, too. We had the hurricane last year. We have a lot of issues involved, and besides the need for extra water. I think another thing, too, is that we continuously have new diseases that prop up. And they're questionable as to what the source of they are. And if we do this experiment, is the way I'd like to look at it, we could be jeopardizing that situation, too, as to what we're going to be drinking. So that's about all I've got to say, and I'd like to ask all you folks to say no to the proposal from the city of Tampa. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you got any questions of me, I'll take a couple, but.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker will be Mark Clutho. Good morning.
Mark Lutho, Largo. Here you have 5A and C, tree trimming. And I look outside and I see all this butchering of the trees. Do you know what you're doing? And over here, D7 under science. Isn't that a joke? And you're talking about water conservation, and it reminds me of how you said, oh, we want money from BP because we couldn't sell our water. Oh, and which is it? You're conserving water? Or you're trying to sell as much as you can? Pathetic hypocrites. It is disgusting. And all I can say is ditto with what Mr. Hoff had to say. Let's not forget that water you're providing now, all that good arsenic and other fine elements that you provide. Here's the headline: Hot Streak Holds 2018, fourth warmest. And here's the neat graph. 2018 continues warming trend as fourth hottest year since 1880. Now again, they're talking about maybe we need a category 6. That a category 5 isn't enough for the hurricanes. And you grand leaders, oh, what a joke. And I stand here, and this supposed green was going to be the first public green building, daylit, green building. This is just one big farce. Yeah, Tampa Bay will go underwater. Yeah, what a doggone shame. It is really, really sad. In a word, malfeasance. And then we have the book, The Sixth Extinction, An Unnatural History.
Thank you. Your time
You
is up.
bring it, don't you?
Thank you. Next speaker is Joe Robinson.
Good morning, Tampa Bay Water Board. My name is Joe Robinson, and I'm a candidate for City Council District 2 citywide. I've also was appointed a gubernatorial appointment back in 2001 to 2009 and served on the Northwest Hillsborough River Basin Board and also the Hillsborough River Basin Board. And as I was there, I served on cooperative funding grants, swim programs, stormwater projects, education initiatives, aerial mappings, Tampa Bay Estuary Program, Northwest Land Use, Tampa Bay Partnership. I'm a licensed professional engineer since 1982. I own my own consulting engineering firm for the last 30 years, and I've come out of retirement on water just to talk about this issue, H1. I'm from Hillsborough County, Tampa, Florida, and you remember the water wars. We don't want to go back there. This is an opportunity to move Tampa forward. It's an augmentation project. It has not been permitted. It has not been designed. So those are all things that will be determined if we move forward and understand that there's questions being asked back and forth. With the project still having to be promoted and designed, it will expose anything that's wrong and all of that, being an engineer. No one can say what's gonna happen until we do the numbers, but it makes sense. We're putting water into our bay. It's increasing the pollutants, the nutrients into the bay. It's a resource, and water is gonna be very precious, having known my years of the aquifer and all of this. This is nothing new, augmentation. We've been doing it for a long time. But the benefits will be one. As it stated, the region meets the water's needs. It will help that. It will avoid this $35 million that everybody's been reading about in unnecessary regional water supply projects. And it will remove thousands of pounds of nutrients out the bay. And it will also, one of the main things is give the health to our river, because the development downtown and everywhere now is based on the river. So I ask you to take consideration today. Let's get those 1 or 2 votes, Mrs. Starkey. Let's get those 1 or 2 votes,
Robinson.
my friend. And just let's move forward. Today is not the end. We may move forward and find that it's not necessary. But in my professional opinion, this will be a long-term regional impact. It will help the region. And we don't ask for much over in Tampa. You know, we don't ask for much, but we give a lot. So I'm asking you today to consider moving forward with this project, and I've come a long way to say that, 'cause I need to be out on the campaign trail. So all I can tell you, let's move Tampa forward. Vote for Joe Robinson.
Thank you. David Geddes.
Hi, good morning.
morning.
David Ballard Geddes Jr. I live on Georgia Avenue in Palm Harbor. Truthfully, what if this government was used as a cover-up operation, a puppet form of government seen as a useful art for limited times in Article 1, Section 8 of this Constitution, a bill of attainder being used to uniformly bankrupt the water supply as fact, in Article 3, Section 2, giving rise, intending to establish the de facto government of medieval England, birthing jurisdictional water despots and tyrants under the 14th Amendment, hypocritically using the Declaration as an inverted document as the Declaration of Independence serves as preamble to Hamilton's Second Constitution, birthed thereof based on water. The original mapping effort in this land was the charting of its rivers, lakes, and streams from the expeditions of Lewis and Clark to John Muir, Daniel Boone, George Washington surveyed watersheds, and Ponce de Leon in the quest of the Fountain of Youth. Quickly following the original mapping effort of this land in order to hide the real underlying intentions of this government until the water supply could be aggregated as fact and reconstituted thereof as watersheds using legislative delinquency and past lack of political efficiencies, hoping to reconstitute itself in Statute 373.715, reconstituted from an unequivocally inefficient form of subsisting government therein stemming from the objective set out in the first sentence of Federalist Paper Number 1, using political pride and constitutional contempt. The candid nature of the 50 states is declarationally preconceived to be dissolved as revealed in Statute 15303, Section 7 and 11, and is to be assumed, simply assailed, reconstituted as watershed regions and districts under Statute 380.08 and 127.01, reconstituted, intending to birth despotic water jurisdictions simply under the 14th Amendment thereof, absent the liberty, the property, and the life of the Gentiles. And this operation is about to hit a wall. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And also, there is a memo that was just passed out, someone that wanted to come and speak to us today from the League of Women Voters of Hillsborough County, St. Petersburg, and North Pinellas County. And that letter has been distributed to you for comments, okay? And before we go into the agenda, I would like to again welcome Commissioner Kathleen Peters to our board. I think this is your first official meeting, so we welcome you, and you couldn't have come at a better time. So we'll move right into the agenda, and we do have the consent agenda in front of us. Is there any comments or any items that be pulled? We do have a motion to approve by Commissioner Eggers, seconded by Commissioner Smith to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show that passed. And I'll now turn over to our regular agenda, Matt Jordan, our Executive Director.
Mr. Jordan?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Regarding the regular agenda, like you, I'm concerned that I want to make sure that on a busy day like today for all of us, that we have enough time to adequately discuss all of the items and not be rushed. And there's some new information that's come to light that, such as HB 3335, that I want to make sure that we address that fully, even though it's not written into the agenda. The MOU certainly is going to take time. Therefore, I move that we defer the Hillsborough Memorandum of Understanding, Section I, into our next meeting where we have more time to adequately look at the backup information and have a discussion. The information for the Hillsborough MOU was not included at the executive committee.
The executive committee
It's
did
I.
review that item.
Did we have it written in front of us? I don't think so. I move that we defer.
John Kennedy,
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy.
could you come forward? Is there,
I'm sorry, ma'am, I have to go upstairs and get my records on this.
but I mean, is it in our agenda? We're talking about
It's in our agenda today for your consideration, yes.
the actual materials. I didn't see it.
The MOU itself, in its entirety, is attached to your agenda, item I-1.
Okay.
I'm just asking for some more time.
I'll second her motion.
Okay, we have a motion, yeah, it is, I did, because I looked at it last night. I'm not sure I understand why we have to. I mean, we can always defer it after we finish with H1 if people have had to leave and we don't have enough time, but we're in comments right now. I don't understand why we really need to defer it until we know we're running out of time and people may have to leave.
Madam Chair?
Is there a question about the particular item that you have?
Yes, I just don't want to rush any more discussions on this board. I want to have ample time to be able to take the MOU back to my own city council and administration and have adequate time for review and discussion so that when I vote on it, I know that I've had the chance to adequately vet it with the City of St. Petersburg administration, staff, and council.
Okay. I mean, as I understand, it's basically Hillsborough County Supply. I mean, it is an MOU, but it doesn't, I don't know how much regional impact it really has. Can you help, Mr. Jordan?
Well, yes, ma'am. I mean, we have been negotiating with Hillsborough County, and we do have a timeline. And if we bring this back, as requested back in April, I don't know, Mr. Kennedy, how that reflects on our timeline.
At our current rate of demand growth down there, we have to have something online to increase capacity in 2025.
But I believe, I mean, April, we can, if that's the board's
I mean,
desire.
is it delaying it to hinder the progress?
It'll put us off for 2 months, and we will adjust to the schedule as directed by the board.
Okay, okay. And Mr. Khan?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that the document itself, the MOU, states that it is not legally binding and that there would have to be subsequent agreements entered into by both parties in order to have a binding arrangement going forward. So I just,
Yeah, basically, that's what I saw, is an item to just move the item forward, but it's not binding.
it's not.
Right. Okay, we have motion on the floor to defer item I-1, and it was seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Well, I was,
Commissioner Starkey?
so I met with staff to go over this MOU last week. So I'm wondering, has anything changed in this from last week? Because there was a few lines that I wanted to wordsmith, but, I mean, I met with Tampa Bay Water on the MOU, so I thought the motion maker was going to pull it up to the beginning of the meeting, so we had the whole meeting to discuss it. So I'm not sure I want to keep postponing.
On I-1? We're on I-1, not H1. We're the MOU, the South Central Hillsborough County Supply Improvement Program.
Right.
I-1.
So Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding. What are we,
It's not H1. We're not delaying H1.
Okay, so we're
She
just-
was delaying I1,
okay,
which is.
that's okay then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
No,
Commissioner Atkins?
I think if one of our members has some questions and it doesn't affect our schedule, then
Sure.
I think we should go ahead and do it.
Okay, sounds good. We have a motion and a second. I wanted to question, it's the first I've heard there was a question on it, so, because it wasn't brought up at executive meeting. So that's the only reason I just wanted to clarify so staff knows, to, get the points from all of us, just like we've done on the other items.
Respectfully, there's a lot of things that the board is working on right now and a lot of new information that comes to light with each meeting that we've been prepping on. And I would just like
I'm looking at the wrong
to have more time to work on this item and take it back to my water resources staff, the mayor, and my colleagues.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Okay, show that passed. Item I1 is now deferred, and
Oh, okay.
we will go right to H1 after the general manager's
Okay.
report.
Yeah, I had I1 and H1 mixed up, sorry.
Okay,
I haven't seen I1.
you're on. You're on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, board members. And the executive committee did meet on January 28th. The full board was in attendance at that meeting. What I briefed the board on was the budget schedule, the pay and class study that we are required to do by the Personnel Rules Manual is getting ready to begin soon. And it's also, as per the interlocal agreement, coming up on time for us to perform our performance and management study. And so anything else is on the agenda other places, and that's all I have unless there are questions.
Any questions? Okay. You can proceed.
Yes, if you want to move on to the source water protection mini grants, Mr. Brandon Moore, the Public Communications Manager, will present those.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Today, I'll quickly update you on the Source Water Protection Mini Grant Program and announce this year's award recipients. And then following the presentation, I'll ask the chair and vice chair to come down to the front and the other board members to gather for a photo. Tampa Bay Water has been involved in source water protection for 2 decades and has been running this program for more than a decade. It's important because it allows us to partner with the Tampa Bay community on protecting the region's drinking water sources. The mini grant program is offered to nonprofit groups, schools, teachers, universities, and community organizations, and the groups are eligible for funds between $2,000 and $10,000 each year. In the past, many grants have helped organizations like the Sierra Club, Mosey, the Girl Scouts, Keep Pasco Beautiful, and more. And in 2018, the grant funding helped efforts that included thousands of events and cleanups, and these efforts resulted in more than 1 million pounds of trash being removed from the waterways, and it reached more than 1 million Tampa Bay area students and residents with source water protection education. And this year, Tampa Bay Water is awarding 4 grants to Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, Keep Pinellas Beautiful, Walter L. Sickles High School, the Pasco Education Foundation on behalf of Wendell Krinn Technical High School. And 2 of our recipients cannot be here today, so I'll skip those in the interest of time. Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, they will use $10,000 in grant funding to continue its successful environmental education program for schools and community groups. The program includes hands-on lessons. These take place at the Florida Learning Gardens, which Tampa Bay Water funded with previous grant funds. And Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful will expand the program with the Environmental Education Center at Reed Park in Tampa. And here to accept the grant, I'll invite Bryant Johnson, the former board president, up to say a few words.
Good morning, Commissioners, board members.
Morning.
Some of my thunder was just stolen, but I'll repeat it anyway. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your continued support of Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful's environmental education program. This grant will allow Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful to continue to educate students on STEM education at the Florida Learning Garden while providing valuable hands-on experiences. We're also excited to announce the newest component of our education program, the Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful Environmental Education Center, which is located at Reed Park in Tampa. It will serve as the focal point for watershed education and source water protection education for our students and participants. So once again, on behalf of our staff and Board of Directors of Keep Tampa Bay Beautiful, I would like to thank you for your generous support.
And now Keep Pinellas Beautiful will use $10,000 in grant money to continue its K through 12 educational curriculum on watershed health, water quality, and source water health. Keep Pinellas Beautiful is expanding its Youth Advisory Council and annual student summer workshops to include watershed stewardship education across Pinellas County. And I'll invite Pat DePlasco, the Executive Director, up to say a few words for Keep Pinellas Beautiful.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much for supporting our efforts, not only this year, but for the past, I don't know how many years. It's been a while, and it's greatly appreciated. Because of the support from Tampa Bay Water and Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and Tampa Bay Estuary Program, we have been able to really expand the educational efforts across Pinellas County in the last couple of years. Last year, I just wanted to share a couple of facts or a couple of numbers with you, stats with you. Last year, Keep Pinellas Beautiful engaged over 18,000 volunteers. We worked on over 1,000 community improvement projects, and we educated 33,000 residents within our communities here in Pinellas County. And it couldn't be done without the support of organizations such as yours. We are very, very grateful, and I just want you to know that we show our gratitude every day by showing you a cleaner, greener, more beautiful place to call home. Thank you. Thank you again. I appreciate it.
So thank you again to the recipients for all the work you do. I'd like to now invite the chair and vice chair down to the front to present the checks.
And then the board members will come around, stand up and come and stand behind us.
Oh, I think you're going to stay right here, right? Right here, Sandy?
Yeah, right there.
Are we gonna stay there?
Here. Yeah. That's
Probably one step to the left. What is this? The Darden's representing the women on that. You still have a key. You used to. We should check.
Again, congratulations to the recipients. It's a great program that we do. And Mr. Jordan, is there anything else in your report?
Well, on the other presentations, you want me to do those?
How, are they going to take a while?
I don't, the next one I don't believe, so I'm not sure about number 4, the potable.
I wanted to move right into H1, and if we could, I don't know how the other board members feel, but if we could defer these presentations till after H1 is completed.
Respectfully,
Councilwoman.
Madam Chair, I think the Potable Reuse Commission report's important because it's about an update on emerging state regulations regarding indirect
Okay.
potable reuse. I mean, I'm up to any ideas of how we could switch the agenda around to save time, but I
No,
did.
we'll go
notice
ahead
one-
with these presentations.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead with number 3, Central Pasco County.
Yes, ma'am, and not sure there's a presentation, but Mike Abala is here from Pasco County. If there's any specific questions or things the board wanted to discuss in regard to their 4G wetlands project.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, Pasco would ask that we defer a presentation to a later board date, but again, I would avail myself to answer any questions that the board may have regarding any of the projects that Pasco County has currently done
Okay.
or plans to do.
Okay. Well, we look forward to your presentation.
Very good. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. And the next one is the Potable Reuse Commission report.
Yes, ma'am, and we should have Brian Wheeler here, the Vice Chair of the Potable Reuse Commission, to make a presentation.
Good morning, Board. Appreciate the opportunity to come and brief you on the update on the Potable Reuse Commission. Unfortunately, Lynn Spivey, our chairman, was unable to attend, so I'm standing in her place. As she said, I'm Brian Wheeler. I'm a vice chairman of the Potable Reuse Commission and recently retired executive director of the Toho Water Authority. So as the need has developed for alternative water supplies in various parts of the state, several utilities have begun to explore potable reuse throughout the state. And as a result of that, and in response to that, 3 of the utility associations, the Water Reuse of Florida, the Florida Water Environment Association Utility Council, and the Florida Section AWWA Utility Council, gathered together in a partnership to develop a collaborative potable reuse commission. The PRC was created a little bit over a year ago. We began work in actually about February of 2018, so we've been at work for the past year working on this. We want to develop a collaborative partnership and bring in stakeholders from outside the utility industry. So we have a representative, one for agriculture from the Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association. We have a representative on the association from public health, an epidemiologist from the Florida Department of Health, representative of industry from the Associated Industries of Florida, an environmental representative from Nature Conservancy, and a representative from academia, a representative from the public health school from the University of South Florida. We also have added ex officio representatives from 3 of the large water management districts, St. John's Water Management District, Southwest Florida Water Management District, and the South Florida Water Management District. And in addition, ex officio participation from Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And to round out our work, we have contracted with the internationally recognized the Water Research Foundation to provide us with technical assistance and also to help in drafting the document overall. So as you'll see here, this is language is an excerpt taken from Governor DeSantis' recently issued executive order. The work of the PRC began over a year ago. You can see that its mission and work are in alignment with the state environmental goals of the new administration. In 2017, prior to beginning this work, the PRC also received encouragement and endorsement from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and from the 3 water management districts previously recognized. This highlights the established mission of the board. I want to highlight a couple of the key parts of this mission. First off, it's a consensus-based decision-making effort. So even though there's 6 utility representatives and 5 non-utility representatives, all the decisions and have to be made by the commission to develop this framework have to be done by consensus, which means you have to have all 11 members of the commission in agreement. So this means the environmental representative has got just as much a voice on the commission as does a utility representative, as does an agriculture representative, as does a public health representative. We have a diversity of input, again, stakeholders who are involved in the potable reuse effort. Part of the mission is also to identify the barriers, both technological, regulatory, and other outside barriers to implementation, and then make recommendations as to how to overcome those barriers and move the potable reuse effort forward. I think one of the key areas here, because one of the keys to success in potable reuse is to have public acceptance, so you have to have public involvement in the effort. We've had this is a little out of depth. We actually had a meeting on last Friday, so we've actually had 12 publicly noticed Potable Reuse Commission meetings over the past year, attended primarily from 30 to 40 attendees. We've had 2 public noticed workshops with attendees, 60 to 75 people attended those workshops. A third workshop is to be scheduled later in the next couple of months. We also made numerous presentations to a number of organizations throughout the state and the country. Most recently, presentation was made to the Senate Industry and Innovation Committee, was done in the last 2 weeks. We participated at the Florida Water Forum in the fall, the Water Reuse National Symposium in the fall of 2018, and also made a presentation at the Florida Chamber Environmental Permitting Short School in the summer of 2018. So the question many people may ask is, why are we looking at potable reuse in Florida? The answer is here. 67% of Florida is designated as a water resource caution area, as that's defined under Rule 62-40. Defines a water resource caution area as a geographic area identified by a district as having existing water resource problems or an area in which water resource problems are projected to develop during the next 20 years. Just to highlight this, 3 of the areas that everybody knows, which is already existing freshwater concerns areas, right here in the Southwest Florida area is the Southern Water Use Caution Area. In Central Florida, we have the Central Florida Water Initiative. In North Florida, we have the North Florida Regional Water Supply Partnership. All these are related to areas where we have growing need for additional alternative water supplies. So development of potable reuse will be done primarily on a case-by-case basis. We aren't talking about potable reuse as being a panacea or the solution to freshwater supplies for Florida. They will be looked at on an individual basis by utility, looking at their own individual circumstances. One of the reasons utilities within Florida have begun to look at potable reuse is you had some of your public comment before saying Florida's got plenty of water. It isn't the same as the drought areas of the West. Is the cost of developing potable reuse as a drinking water source have become competitive with looking at other alternative water supplies. There are also pointed out natural benefits to going to potable reuse also. Instead of discharging nutrient-laden reclaimed water or effluents to surface waters, those waters would remove those nutrients, creating drinking water, taking them out of the environmental system. Also will help rehydrate natural systems. So there's also environmental benefits associated with using reclaimed water as potable reuse. But the key element here in developing potable reuse is protecting public health and the environment. So you have to meet both federal and state regulations, but in reality, potable reuse is what's being called the intersect between the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. Obviously, reclaimed water comes out of the wastewater side of the house. Drinking water comes out of the drinking water side of the house. There's an overlap between those 2 regulatory concerts, but you have to go beyond just meeting the regulatory process of the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act, because people, as you've already heard, there's a concern about, is this safe? Is it safe to drink? So the development of potable reuse means you have to go meet the regulation and go beyond the regulation to be able to assure the public that what you're getting is a safe, drinkable water. Florida is not on the bleeding edge, as people might say. We're not the first to do this, as has already been cited. Western states have led the way in moving into potable reuse. California, most notably, has been the leader within the country in doing potable reuse. The most famous project they have is the Orange County Water Factory, which is the largest potable reuse project in the country. It's been in operation for a number of years and has continued to expand and provide water supply to the Los Angeles metro area. In addition to California, Arizona just recently started their framework for potable reuse. The states of Colorado and Oklahoma are working on potable reuse regulations, frameworks at the same time. And Texas is another classic example of potable reuse. They've had cities that have actually had to go to potable reuse as a result of the drought. And as was already mentioned previously, El Paso, Texas will actually have the first direct potable reuse source to augment their water supply. Will go into operation, I think, in the very near future. In addition, a couple of states that aren't listed here that are also in developing potable reuse projects is the state of Georgia and the states of Virginia. Also, Virginia has also one of the oldest potable reuse projects. It's been in operation for a number of years, the Occoquan Reservoir, which is in Fairfax, Virginia. So this here, you see the logos. These are some of the utilities within Florida who are in the process of pursuing and evaluating potable reuse. The most advanced project that's done the most in this area is right here. As you know, the city of Clearwater Utilities has done extensive work in looking at evaluating potable reuse. It's even gone to the process of actually getting permits for its project. The most well-known project is the Altamont Springs project. Recently received international recognition as Reuse Project of the Year through the International Water Association. They have developed a project with new processes to develop potable reuse within the central part of the state. The key to, as I've mentioned before, to the success of potable reuse is public education. So all these utilities who are pursuing potable reuse as one of the key parts of their potable reuse evaluation is also to develop a public education piece to engage the public so that they understand what the need is for potable reuse and understand what the technology is and the fact and how it will be safe for them to utilize. And so if you want more information, we have a website. All the documents, everything has been produced as a result of the Potable Reuse Commission action. It's available on the website, meeting minutes, meeting agendas, documents that have been presented. And if you have interest in more of the actual projects, these are some contact information available for you to contact any of these utilities and get more information on how those projects are being developed. And this is just an outline, just gives you an example of the framework. This is the document that was developed several years ago by the associations seen here, the Water Environment Federation, the Water Reuse Association, American Water Works Association, and the National Water, I can't remember that one. There's four national organizations that helped present this framework in 2016. And basically the framework that we're developing under the Florida Potable Reuse Commission will kind of follow this outline and will address these type of subjects in its development. And this is an example of how the framework will come together. The framework is not meant to solve all the problems, to establish regulations, just to provide the basis for DEP and the water management districts to begin working on a regulatory process to be able to implement potable reuse within the state. It'll provide recommendations. It'll identify issues that need to be addressed within regulation and statute if necessary, and make recommendations. But again, there'll be a regular regulatory process to go through to establish the regulatory framework. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for your report. I'm impressed by, I can only imagine the level of work that you're doing on the PRC Commission, and your mission statement says it's consensus-based work using diverse stakeholders to put together a framework for regulations, and I believe you're going to submit that framework to the legislature at the end of the year?
Well, right now, the schedule for hopefully completing the framework is probably in the neighborhood of the May-June timeframe. And then with the intent then to develop legislation that would go to the 2020 session of the legislature to provide the direction or to the FDP to move forward with developing the regulatory process. And so the framework would again inform the regulatory process, but show the legislature that there is a basis for moving forward with the regulatory process.
You mentioned two Florida projects. The Clearwater project, we've learned, has recently been paused because of some issues with cost and technology. Altamont Springs has a different hydrogeology than this area, correct?
Correct.
Okay, well, my concern is I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your work and that consensus-based approach to this important work. It's obviously going to be an important technology to get right for future water supply. My concern is why we here in Tampa Bay might try to pull the cart before the horse with the TAP project and not wait to see what the framework says. I'm concerned that we would be committing to spending money on feasibility plans that we might find out would be not compatible with the emerging framework. I'm also concerned that some of these other indirect potable projects across the country, they've put a great deal of their budget into public outreach and acceptance and education, and I'd hate to see us go forward with a plan that we then experience pushback because perhaps we didn't do adequate public outreach and education.
Most of the the projects that are all listed up here are all indirect, what's called indirect potable reuse projects. There is an existing regulatory pathway to obtain permitting for indirect potable reuse projects. And I'm not intimately familiar with the TAP project. I can only speak from the standpoint of the project that my utility that I previously was the executive director for pursued, which was the Tow Water Authority. We chose to move forward with our project, which is an indirect potable reuse project, under the existing regulatory framework. So we're in the process of doing right now what's required under the regulation, a one-year pilot project to develop data to do what's called proof of concept, be able to prove that the technology we're using will in fact develop potable reuse. And then if that then is successful and DEP signs off on that, then we would go into the actual design and production of the project, which means we looked at it primarily as a 3-year window. If somebody needs an indirect potable reuse project now, and I don't know TAP's needs or needs, our desire was we think we might need to make a decision within that 3-year time frame. If we wait on the Potable Reuse Commission framework and the new regulations, which won't really, we hope will be more streamlined in terms of permitting, you're probably looking at a 2-year process, year to get through the legislature, at least a minimum of a year to go with the regulatory process, and then probably again a 2 to 3 year process after that. So the wait means that means primarily from our utility was a 2-year delay. That's our decision to move forward. I think that's the same decision some of the utilities made. It's a timing situation, and it's not really, because there is a regulatory path that presently exists for indirect potable reuse. The Potable Reuse Commission initially started out to focus more on direct potable reuse, but because there's an overlap between direct and indirect, was to encapsulate and look at what do we need to do on the existing regulations on indirect potable reuse to improve upon those and make sure that they don't contradict each other between direct potable and indirect potable reuse.
Thank you.
Any other?
Okay, any other? Yes, Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. You had a slide about natural resources here, and listing one of the benefits was that these kinds of processes can remove CECs, contaminants of emergency concerns.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Well, because contaminants of emergency concern depends on how you're talking. Also, they're called unregulated contaminants, and under the present structure of the Safe Drinking Water Act, EPA is required every so many years to bring a number of contaminants forward to determine for future regulation. They have what they call a list of contaminants that are the emerging concern contaminants. And so the process for bringing those into actual regulations is a slow, drawn-out process. It can take upwards of 10 years to actually get to a full regulation. If you're going to do potable reuse, people in the public have some concerns about these unregulated contaminants. One of the ones that's in the couple that are in the public domain right now, a lot of discussion is things called PFAS, 1,4-dioxane. Those type of things are not going to move all the way to a regulatory process within a short time. So if you want to convince somebody, your public, that you're ready to drink the water, you have to show people that you have looked at these contaminants and that you've developed processes that are going to reduce them below any health concern level. So that's what I said, that you have to actually go beyond the Safe Drinking Water Act, the drinking water regulations. You have to go look at those unregulated contaminants and determine whether those exist within your stream and whether they exist at levels that you need to remove those to convince the public that this water is in fact safe to drink.
So what you mean is that the best practices that your organization is recommending would include some processes that would assure the public that those are removed even prior to regulations being in place.
That's right. And if you look at all the successful potable reuse projects that are presently in existence, California, Texas, Arizona, you'll see that's a key piece, building block of those projects to develop that public confidence, is to demonstrate that, hey, I've looked at these, I've determined whether they exist in my reclaimed water stream, and if they are, then I've removed them to the level that makes them safe to drink.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on that line of thought. So the Safe Drinking Water Act delineates what items are regulated in our water. But there's a bunch of things that currently aren't regulated. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct.
And then to move forward with that, with any development of water product, whatever it is, there's a separate line of trying to convince not only ourselves but the public that those unregulated or things that are not regulated
Right.
are taken care of in a reasonable fashion.
That's correct, because people know within the public, they read the media, they see things out there, they want to know that these things are being addressed, because I need to go back to the reality. We know that all water we drink today is in essence recycled water. And what you do with potable reuse, because the water gets treated, gets put back into the environment, goes through the water cycle, comes back to us again. What you do with potable reuse is you begin to shorten the distance between the wastewater treatment and the drinking water treatment. So people become concerned that those contaminants are not, which are actually, some are going into nature and being removed in nature, and some are actually going to nature and not being removed in nature. They're because they're persistent and they don't get removed very easily in nature. But as these things come up as contaminants that we become aware of, these end up on a list that EPA looks at as future contaminants that we may want to regulate. Not all those contaminants on, quote, the unregulated list end up being regulated, because as they do further studies and evaluations, they determine it's not necessary at the levels these exist to regulate. Other ones, they do make the determination, but the process, as I said, for getting to that regulation process is a long process. And so to get public confidence, you have to go back to the public and say, we've looked at our reclaimed water, we've determined whether these that have health significance exist at levels of concern, and if they do, then we are going to remove them so that we can provide you the assurance that you're getting the water you're drinking has addressed those particular concerns.
Thank you.
And is anyone else? And I just wanted to ask you, because there are a lot more potable reuse projects popping up, because communities are growing and people are looking for ways to provide more water. But how do you, I know we're talking about what's in the water, but how does your organization keep up with the new technologies that are being developed to add more filtration into the water process?
Yeah, there's as I mentioned, the Water Reuse Foundation, which is one of our partners we're working with, which is an internationally recognized partnership for water research evaluation. They have an extensive budget for looking at potable reuse. In fact, the state of California has funded them at the tune of $5 million to do additional research, because it's to keep up with what's happening technology-wise. And so, yes, the industry does. Industry's ongoing. There's continuing research, continuing looking at what's the best technologies. In fact, that was the reason for Altamont Springs project. Was most people know that the first potable reuse projects were essentially the same as desalination projects. They went through reverse osmosis, went through membrane processes. Mm-hmm. If you're like us, you're in the central part of the state, that creates a brine reject. How do I get rid of that in the center part of the state? Is there a way to go through the potable reuse process so that I don't create a reject that's now a hazardous waste that I have to deal with? And that was in essence what Altamont Springs did. They were able to demonstrate new processes, technologies that achieved potable reuse quality without having to go through a reverse osmosis process.
They did it themselves at Altamont Springs?
Right.
Okay. Mr. Jordan, do we do anything like that here?
As far as,
The filtration process, do we research technologies to see?
yes, we do that, and if you have specific questions, I would defer to Mr. Hurd to answer those at the appropriate time.
Well, you can come up later and answer that. Okay. Great. Well, thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Starkey.
I have to press a button, right? No?
No.
We have a project going in Pasco County. Actually, it's a private company, but we allow them access to our facilities for their testing. It's in Odessa. But they take our water and they turn it into pharmaceutical-grade water. It's just very, very expensive. And the machine is very, very big, but I was not sure if you're aware of that, so.
No, I'm not aware of that, but yeah, the technology is there to take almost any water and create it into drinking water. I often use when I used to talk with school groups, and you all probably appreciate this, that when you start talking about recycled water, the first thing I talk about is at the International Space Station, how many 55-gallon barrels of of water do you think they sent up to the space station? And that's the same water they've been recycling up there for years. So the technology exists to get whatever quality water you want. It's really a question of cost.
Right.
What's the cost of getting that quality of water that you want?
One more question.
Great, yes. Commissioner.
The use of reclaimed water to irrigate lawns, there's obviously the water goes into the grass, into the sod. Is there a process through that process is more of the things that we're concerned about from the pharmaceutical standpoint and that kind of thing? Are they able to be filtered out in that process versus this direct injection that kind of bypasses that process? Because one of the things that continues to concern me is that we have a real need for reclaimed water to irrigate soil, which is another way to filtrate the process. And so I just wonder if we made more of a commitment to that, then it would free up more water that's otherwise being used on the grass around the area. So it kind of works hand in hand. But I just wondered about the process of that versus the process of direct injection that might bypass that.
Well, I perceive two questions there, so I'll give you two answers. One is first that when you spray reclaimed water for lawn irrigation, the question, does that natural process remove many of those emerging contaminants? And the answer is a large number of them, yes, because they're biodegradable, and so the fact that they're entering into the environment, if some of those contaminants are not biodegradable, the answer is no. But they might get taken up through some chemical process, and that's part of. And I'll come back to my project at Toho. What we are, in fact, doing for indirect potable reuse is we have some rapid infiltration basins which are located within the Florida Ridge, which is the high recharge part to the aquifer. We have approximately 150 to 200 feet of sand to go to limestone. So what we're doing is we're testing how much removal do we get from our reclaimed water once it enters the rib, as it travels through that 200 foot of sand. What's the quality of water look like going in? What's the quality of water going out? What did we remove? And if we didn't remove everything we think we need to remove, then what level of treatment do we need to do additionally to make sure that the water we withdraw for drinking water will take care of those contaminants? Second answer to your question, if I've got reclaimed water, should I use it for lawn irrigation or should I use it for drinking water? To me, that's an individual utility decision based upon your individual circumstances. And like I said, it's also an economic question, because really reclaimed potable reuse for Florida is not, as we've already said, it's not because we don't have water in Florida. It's a question of what's the least expensive way to get drinking water for my customers and to meet my future demand. So there's other factors you considered why potable reuse is being, same reason in Georgia, same reason in Virginia why they looked at did potable reuse. It wasn't because water wasn't available, it's because that was the least expensive alternative to meet their needs.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Great discussion. Thank you for coming. And, okay, well now, Mr. Jordan, we're on H1. I'll let you introduce it.
Yes, ma'am. H1 is the agreement memorandum of understanding with the city of Tampa regarding the Tampa Augmentation Project. And for discussion, have Mr. Peter Dunbar, Special Counsel, and Mr. Don Kahn is here today at the dais in place of Ms. Ventura. She was unable to attend due to a family emergency.
Good morning.
Madam Chairman, good morning. Don, did you want to make some opening comments, or do you want me to just go right to it?
Just a few comments with regard to what is in your packet and how it was developed. Since the last board meeting in December, a total of 7 meetings have taken place with member government attorneys and counsel for Tampa Bay Water. 4 of those occurred prior to the executive committee meeting and 3 after. And of course, there was a lot of good discussion at our executive committee meeting and direction about the 6 items that had been identified for negotiation. And so what you have in front of you is the agreement, the MOU agreement that was presented in December, but also a listing of the 6 issues that the board asked for member government counsel to review. And Mr. Dunbar, I would suggest at this time, could walk us through those 6 issues and what you have in front of you.
I will say that there was not consensus on all 6 issues, but there was consensus on some of those issues. And with that, Mr. Dunbar?
Madam Chairman, members of the board, let me begin by, again, acknowledging the member government attorneys who gave us the time and effort to get this done. Joe Morrissey from Pinellas, Joe Richard from Pasco, Tim Driscoll from Newport Richey, Jane Wallace from St. Petersburg, Ed Helveson from Hillsborough, and Jan McLean from Tampa, all of which contributed to make this possible. And as Mr. Khan pointed out, on the 6 issues, there were 2 where there was no alternative language and where consensus was reached. And I know there is an issue of time concern. Madam Chair, if you'd like to begin there, I would suggest that we go first to item 2 and then to item 3, where there were no alternatives and for the board to consider.
Well, I think the best thing to do, though I believe most of the board members were at the executive meeting, but for the purposes of the audience, and I think if we could just address each one and say what the consensus was on each item, and then bring up the 2 items that didn't have consensus.
There were 2 items that did have consensus and 4
2.
that did not.
Okay, then
I
bring
was
the-
suggesting starting with the 2 where consensus.
2
was
bring,
reached.
okay, I see, but you are going to go through each one.
I was.
Oh, okay, good. I just wanted to make sure.
Item number 2 deals with the Harney Canal and the 2040 permit. As you will recall, there is a wide discrepancy on what is potentially available and when it is potentially available. The language that was consensus among the member government attorneys provides that to the extent and to whatever extent there is available water under that permit currently used by Tampa, that it would become fully available to Tampa Bay Water as a regional source when TAP became fully functional. And that's the essence of what the language provides in proposal number 2 or issue number 2.
Okay, questions? Okay, we'll start down here.
Yes, thank
Councilwoman Rice.
I mean, I'm looking at the wording here, and the discrepancy is that even though the permit says that we can get up to 20 MGD from Harney Canal, we discussed at length that that's simply not what is available. And yet it's, this reference to 20 MGD keeps popping up, and it popped up in the worksheet as a benefit in the legislation that was filed last week. And I just think it needs to be clarified that we're not talking about 20 MGD that can be easily accessed by Tampa Bay Water. And it's not clear to me that that's reflected in the writing in a clear way.
I have 3 copies.
So I would
So,
suggest language that makes it clear. I believe, I think St. Pete had submitted some earlier language dealing with this that didn't make it to this final consensus paragraph, but, I think referring to 20 MGD is misleading.
The language doesn't refer to 20 MGD. It specifically speaks to the permit and whatever volume might be available there. The comments that you made about the lack of definitive information on when and how much it can produce, I would not disagree with. One of the things that you'll find in your packet is both the historical use, which on occasion actually exceeded 20 MGD, and then there is the modeling effort that was done both, I think, by Tampa Bay Water and I believe has been looked at by the Water Management District that would indicate if you translated that to an annual average, that's somewhere between 2 and 5 million gallons a day. And I'm a lawyer, there are people here to answer the questions in more detail, but because that I do not think it would be, and I think that the consensus among the lawyers is to say a number here would not accurately reflect what the agreement would embrace if this was included. And the language that the lawyers reached consensus on is that whatever is there by identifying the permit becomes the benefit of Tampa Bay Water, and Tampa would waive off any claim to that capacity.
Maybe we should hear from our Tampa Bay Water staff. Mr. Hurd?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Ken Hurd, Chief Science Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Our evaluation of this has determined that, like Mr. Dunbar indicated, on a long-term annual average basis, the yield would be from 2 to 5 million gallons per day. However, during a typical drought period, we could experience up to 16 million gallons per day of supply on an annual average. The additional water to get you to 20, what we've experienced is that the district would have to issue an emergency order to get the 16 up to 20 MGD. That's based on our evaluation. I'll be happy to take any other questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I ask our staff to follow up on Mr. Hurd's comments? I believe we have a graph of what's happened in the canal. It actually reflects the correct numbers. Mr. Baird.
Brad Baird, City of Tampa. It is misleading in this case to use annual average numbers because when you need the water from the Harney Canal is during drought times. That is when Tampa asks that water be pumped to keep the reservoir full. When you look at the graphs of what we've actually pumped during drought years, we have pumped for the whole month in 4 different months during 2000, 2001, and 2008 and 9, over 30 million gallons a day, every day. The 2 to 5 that Mr. Hurd references is an annual average that keeps, and the 16 is an annual average in drought years. And even in those drought years, we have times where 0 is pumped because we can have as much as 2 billion gallons coming down from the watershed. On those months, in those average numbers, they're counted as 0 available, when in fact there are billions of gallons available. So that's where it is misleading, because annual average has nothing to do with when you need the water the most in the dry season. So, and I have the graphs. I've shared that with some of you. I'll be happy to share with the entire board. Okay. No, the graph that is in the packet is a rolling average. It is not the graph that I'm referring to that shows actual pumped every month. And the rolling average includes the zeros as well. Thank you.
Do you have a question?
I'm just going to say, reiterate what Mr. Baird said. As you well know, the bypass canal, when you need water, that's when you have drought. When you don't need water and you have abundance of water everywhere, including in the bypass canal overflowing, certainly you're going to draw 0. You don't need it, but it's available. That doesn't mean that tomorrow you may not need it for something else. It is still available, although not used, and the graph is right on both instances. So you have to look at it legally, and what does it mean? Is it available and not used? Then it's 0, but it's still available. Is it drought? And it's down and the aquifer comes up because of the pressure when they dug the canal that went into the aquifer, and the water is greater pressure from the earth coming up than from the earth coming down, then it's available. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Oakley.
My main concern about the Harney Canal leads to the testing of the groundwater. And I think Tampa Bay Water has answered the question as far as
surface water reaching the Harney Canal. They're pretty sure it will not. But when you get to testing, the test is going to take some time to make sure that that water put in, if there's something wrong with that water going in and it gets to the Harney Canal, it's in the aquifer and it messes up a lot of our system that we use water. So I'm very concerned about that issue.
Yes, Madam Chair. Commissioner Oakley, you're correct about that. We are looking at that as a possible influence after the water in the TAP project is injected into the ground. Would it be possible for that water to come up through the ground into the Tampa Bypass Canal? That's something we're going to have to continue to look at. We have reviewed the city's model, and we're preparing some questions to continue looking into that specific issue.
Well, I understand that, but that'll take some time to test. But if you're testing and in that testing somehow, I don't know how you run that test, but somehow that test is influenced by reclaimed water and it gets into that water source, I think we got a real problem. And I don't think we need to go into a memorandum with that being out there thinking that we're going to solve that. I mean, if it comes out that way, I think that's a big issue and concerns me.
Commissioner Sturkey?
One of the suggestions that I was going to say was in the MOU, we just need to just clarify in that sentence, it says Tampa will not permit any water developed by TAP to directly or indirectly enter the Harney Canal or the Tampa Bypass Canal. We just need to be clear, and it says permit any injected water. And just clean up that language in the MOU, and then I'm more comfortable with it.
I just don't think that
You don't know yet. Madam Chair?
you don't even know. You need that testing to go forward. And I honestly believe if we go forward with language that is not very clear, that we're going to get in a memorandum that we as Tampa Bay Water can't get out of. And I think that will create a big issue with our whole system.
Okay, to further answer that question that you have, I know Councilman Miranda would like staff to.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask the City of Tampa's Water Director to come up and make statements regarding those concerns?
Yes, the Tampa Bay Water is reviewing our preliminary model. We are in the process of refining that model. But beyond that, the way in which the project will be operated will actually be able to control the zone of influence as far as how far the water spreads. And the reason is we're not just putting it down, we're taking it back out. We can control the rate at which we put it down, and we can control the rate at which we take it out. So in addition to controlling the rates, we will have monitoring wells to tell us just how far the reclaimed water has moved within the aquifer, and we will be able to control it. So we're going to continue with the model, but we're confident that we will be able to control the zone that it influences.
Excuse me.
Yes, Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, when you talk about, monitoring it and watching to see where it's moved, and then you'll be able to control it. You said, how would that work? Just by stopping the injection, or once it's underground, how are you going to control it?
Yes, by regulating how much we put in which part of the aquifer, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Is the reclaimed water they're putting in, is it almost potable water when they put it in?
Yes, it's tertiary treated, and currently what we're looking at is adding UV treatment to it before it goes into the aquifer. We'll continue our studies, and as I mentioned earlier, if there's anything that we find that's hazardous, we will treat for that as well.
I'd rather not put something there that would be hazardous.
I would rather not either.
Yes, I understand.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, Mr. Dunbar.
I think that the comments and observations that are made were very appropriate, and I think that's what your member government attorneys saw when they arrived at the language that's here. Issue number one, maybe we should have started there, provides an opt-out, which got quite a bit of discussion. But the issues that have been identified the difference in what Tampa's need was and has always been able to meet here is a little different when you look at it in a way that you're trying to plan for long-term capital improvements and what that might mean on an average daily production basis. I don't know that either is wrong or right. Those are questions that still need to be pursued, as I think Mr. Hurd said. What the language that your member government lawyers provided to you was, whatever that is, while you begin that inquiry and move towards the potential for an opt-out, Tampa makes an unequivocal assignment of the permit privileges and rights which it which it has. And so that was the language and the reason for it and why I think there was consensus reached on it. Because much of the discussions that you've had, we had among ourselves as well. So that's the essence of the language.
Okay, Commissioner Oakley, you recognize.
The problem I have with that is the fact it takes six of us to vote it in. And I've been told that it'll take 6 of us to vote it out, and I think there's some consensus that maybe only 5 to vote it back out if there's an issue. But my problem is, I've been told that once we enter this memorandum, we'll never be able to stop it with our concerns of what's going on with it. And that's I don't know if anybody can ever answer that question, to be honest with you. But I'm concerned about the fact, because I believe in our initial conversations about it, we were talking about one member government could stop it. But then I've heard that it'd be, that if we 6 voted in, 6 would have to vote it out.
I think that's a valid observation, and I think that the goal of the member government lawyers was to try and show you in these 6 issues that had been previously identified what might be entered into, what might go into the agreement. The opt-out piece is number 1, and we'll come back to that. But ultimately, the policy is to debate the agreement up or down, I assume. Before you get to that threshold of debate, we wanted to try and offer you language that would put it in the best possible form on this particular issue that contributes to that from our point of view. But the issue of getting in, getting out, when you make that decision, my thought would be, and I think our consensus was, you ought to have the complete agreement to talk about in or out with this in it. Whether you chose to not do the agreement is an appropriate policy debate, but trying to make the debate over the overall agreement the best agreement it can be before you do that seemed to be the appropriate way to approach it. Does that make sense?
Well, I would think that I just have a strong feeling about the fact that once we enter an agreement like that, we're not going to be able to get out of it, and it continues. And if it works out in this regional, and I think if everything worked out and all the tests came in and they were regional in nature and they went the right way, I think we all be in favor of that. But there's so many unanswered questions because of testing and the fact of, I've been told the fact that you get in that memorandum, you'll never get out of it. It'll continue.
Well, I think, so we need, it says in here in the MOU, it takes 6 votes to get out of the MOU. Is that correct?
No, the issue number 1, and maybe we should,
I think you really need to clarify for everybody
back to number 1.
what's in and what's out.
Right.
And then Councilwoman Rice, I'll come to you.
As I believe our general counsel has previously opined, to do this requires 6 votes. The opt-out provision that the 5 of the 6 member government lawyers offer for your consideration provides that to opt back out, if you do this agreement, will require the same 6 votes. And I believe, Commissioner Oakley, that's what you were referring to. So that,
6 votes to get out.
yes.
And then, but it only requires 1 member government to disrupt the whole interlocal. Is that correct?
I can't see where one-member government's gonna do anything. If you don't have six, you're gonna say no.
I'm sorry,
No, I
Madam Chair, I'm
mean,
not
if
fully
a
understanding.
member, okay, going to the interlocal, not the MOU, the agreement we have for the state that created Tampa Bay Water. If one member government just wanted out, that would disrupt everything, right?
Could I comment on that?
Yes, please.
If one member government wanted out, the way that that would have to be done is to amend the interlocal agreement. They cannot simply say, I'm leaving. You would have to amend the interlocal agreement, which obviously then would require the participation
Okay.
of all of the member
Gotcha.
governments.
Okay. I just thought it should be clear on those points. Okay, Councilwoman Rice?
Um,
And we're still on the opt-out provision?
Typically, in a number of the contracts that I've approved as a council member or as a board member on other intergovernmental agencies, it seems like there's almost always in a contract some sort of boilerplate opt-out provision, and that protects both parties. I realized that the St. Pete version of our opt-out was met with a little bit of resistance, but I just think that we need to have something stronger in there to protect all of our interest. And I would feel more comfortable if the provision that we settled on was basically 6 votes to continue, rather than 6 votes to opt out. It just seems more fair that way to me. Thank you.
Comments?
Excuse me. Why are we treating this agreement any different than the agreement we have with Tampa Bay Water as a whole, all 9 members?
Right.
That's why you won't.
Are you asking me?
I'm just saying anyone.
It's
I don't
because
care.
this is an assignment of rights to Tampa to pursue this project that requires 6 votes instead of a unanimous vote as Tampa Bay Water.
And when we had the assignments of rights, all governments agreed, if not, none of us would be here.
I thought that's what we're discussing right now.
Okay.
We're on the opt-out provision, right? We're on number 1.
We are.
Okay, and so there's been a recommendation from Councilwoman Rice to make it 6 votes to approve the MOU and not, instead of 6 votes to disband the MOU. Is that correct, Commissioner?
It's what Pinellas County had submitted that we discussed at the executive committee meeting.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, I think
Commissioner Eggers?
the subtle difference, but I think it's significant, and that is that in effect, we're saying today that we believe in this enough, if we go that route, to vote it in. And I think that needs to be the constant reaffirmation, that at the end of that 12 months, or whatever the time frame is that we will have additional information that frankly many of us think we should have before we enter into it. But nonetheless, if we go down that road, we'll have more information at that point, and we get a chance to again reaffirm that we need to opt in. And I think that is the subtle difference, that we get 6 votes to opt in or the agreement isn't in place. And I think this is a significant issue, significant enough that that we really have lots of discussion about this, because there's no way that the opt-out provision is the right thing to do once we're doing this opt-in provision to get us all involved. So I'm going to go round in circles on this, but I feel very strongly about the same comment.
Okay, any other comments?
I'm sorry, do we have a motion on the table?
Yes,
Oh, did you
I'm
make
sorry,
a motion?
I move that we adopt the language from the earlier submitted Pinellas version, the opt-in version that would require 6 votes to continue.
Wait, don't we already have 6 votes to opt in? I thought you were talking about you need 6 votes to continue.
We need a majority to approve the MOU.
Which is?
5.
No.
No.
The interlocal requires 6 votes to approve the MOU. To approve the MOU, because we're dealing with a transfer of rights. And so 6 votes are required to approve the MOU, And what was proposed by Mr. Dunbar and the member government attorneys was 6 votes to opt out.
Right.
And I think what we're discussing is, rather than opt out, an affirmative vote to continue.
Yes. That is my motion.
Okay.
And I second.
Okay, so we have I'm sorry, I misunderstood. It's a lot of,
Well, and I need to make this observation. When we were in the member government lawyers dialogue, there were 2 Pinellas proposals, so I'm not sure which one we're referring to. But,
okay, I'm going back to the Pinellas legal and St. Pete legal versions when we discussed the opt-out. I didn't see anything in the Pinellas legal about the 6 members, but there's so many versions that have been floating around. There really have been. But this one was from our December meeting that we had. And then we went back and we looked at the but there is a motion on the floor to make it to opt in. It would be a vote of 6 members, not the majority.
I'm sorry, clarification, we're already in, so I think it's if we wanted to stop this MOU, it takes an easier threshold to get out? Is that what you're saying? I mean, if we already agree, if we approve this today, we're in, right? With an opt-out clause, or am I missing?
No, they're saying they want 6 votes to approve today.
That's what we already have.
Yeah, here's the deal. It says within 1 year of the execution of this agreement, we have to continue making the commitment to it by opting in again.
Okay.
Not.
And it would be the same number.
approving to get out, we need 6. We're just going to say, hey, we've got additional information this year that is relevant, that it continue to get our confidence to opt in another year, or whatever the time.
And so the votes numbers should be the same on both instances.
On
I think
both
that's
ends.
reasonable.
Yes,
And
now it's clear.
Where is that St. Pete language? Is that in
The
this?
Pinellas language,
Pinellas
you would not have seen it at the executive meeting because it was in our December board meeting. Remember this document that we used? And we had all the member governments' issues for each issue.
I don't think I had that with me.
But at the executive meeting, we only had to see the attorneys all met together, and then they came back with what they felt was a consensus, except St. Pete still had some issues on several ones. The Pinellas issue on that was not, to my recollection, was not included.
This is an earlier version.
Is that fair? Okay. Did you have a question?
Oh, it's right here.
So, I mean, I just wanted, like you do, we'll see what I'm voting on. So, is there some way to get that to us?
Obviously, a very important decision by the board. It might be appropriate for the member government lawyers to take a look at it. While I've been standing here, I've looked at 4 different versions, but they date back as late as December, and I'm not sure which version I could.
The
At the
version,
executive board meeting, the Pinellas version was, within 1 year of the execution date of this agreement, Tampa Bay Water must acknowledge by board resolution that the benefits provided by TAP, including the functions of the TAP recovery wells, are regional in nature. If the board fails to make such acknowledgement, then the agreement shall be of no further force or effect. Neither Tampa Bay Water nor Tampa shall have any further obligations pursuant to the agreement. So in other words, 6 votes yes to continue at that point in time a year from now.
Thank you.
okay, so the only document I have is from the December board meeting, and I don't have that language.
I'm looking for it.
Executive committee minutes,
The December board meeting.
I was asking.
I have it.
Just saw it. and
Well, I have it here too, but did we add something to it?
She added.
I just read it.
6 votes. That's not in.
Oh, that's not in here.
but
Right, that's why I was asking. But then it did not get included in this when we came to the executive meeting. That's the problem. And I think our members just don't have, and now we're changing things. I think the attorneys, I see them kind of moving around their seats and they want to be able to discuss it.
I'm sure they could almost memorize it, I'm sure.
Probably, yes. Yeah, Mr. Dunbar,
Do you have this in?
did you have a comment?
It's,
My comment, well, what went to the executive committee meeting did provide 6. It's referenced as same vote in, same vote out, if you opted out, or as was being suggested, that same vote to continue. My struggle here is that there are at least 3 different versions of what Pinellas has offered, and I'm not sure which one we're dealing with, because I've been shown one that goes all the way back to December. I have 2 that we discussed at the executive committee meeting, and then they withdrew their language when we were in our dialogue. But I think if the issue is as narrow as Councilwoman Rice is describing, it's easy to find something that works.
Okay, we do have motion on the floor in a second, and we're in discussion still.
In discussion, and we're talking about the MOU with Tampa. I think if that's what you want, we should have MOU on the same standard for everyone in the future going forward, so everyone is treated without discrimination,
I agree. Yeah.
including the ones that Tampa Bay Water may have with other agencies.
Mayor?
Just to clarify, as I understand it, in order to adopt this MOU, we need a supermajority of 6 out of the 9 votes. And if I can put words in Commissioner Rice's mouth, what she is suggesting with this motion is that when we get to the review point, which appears to be next summer of 2020, that we would then have to have an affirmative vote of a supermajority of 6 of the 9 sitting members in order to continue at that time with the benefit of a year's additional information on how this whole project is going to proceed.
Yes.
Good summation.
And then.
Excellent summation. I wish he had talked earlier.
Then Councilman Miranda says that every vote should be a supermajority, then why is this vote different than other votes? And,
Rights.
you know,
In a way,
Because
yes.
it's an assignment of rights.
I'm not trying to be in any way, but I'm saying if this is the standard that we're setting today for this memorandum, that it should be for all memorandums of understanding, including those that Tampa Bay Water themselves may have with other agencies in any form.
Yes, Commissioner Smith.
I don't see why this other language does more or is any stronger than the language I'm seeing in number 1 of the opt-out provision, not 1A, but the other one, because it says that no later than June 30th, 2020, Tampa Bay Water may, in its sole discretion by board resolution, requiring the same vote as this agreement, which would be 6 votes, cancel this agreement upon the determination that the benefits will not accrue to Tampa Bay Water and its members. I mean, I think that's saying it's still going to take, you can cancel it if you've got 6, if you have 6 people here, board members, that don't want to move forward, they can cancel this agreement using the language that we have already before us. So that seems to me to be doing what everybody wants to do.
Okay, Commissioner Agri?
Well, first of all, for every project that comes before this board, every project is fully vetted by Tampa Bay Water. It's investigated, it's even either permitted or at least looked to see how easy it is to get permitted. It's What's the funding cycle? Do we have the money for it? And you go through this entire process and bring us a final project that says, yes, this has benefit to this board, now we're going to vote on it. This project has more questions than answers. We are going into this project saying, Tampa says there's a bunch of benefits, and we are going to prove them over time. So I think it's incumbent upon us to continue from year to year to keep reaffirming that this is indeed still a regional project. And that's why I think it's different. And I think it's also an assignment of rights. And it's also, it puts the onus on the city of Tampa to continue performing and doing their due diligence instead of putting it on Tampa Bay Water, who in effect does things a little bit differently. And so I think it's really the way it should be. So, thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm looking at a
Councilman?
ruler that's got 12 inches. I don't know if we're talking about the first 6 or the last 6.
What was that? I didn't hear.
Yes, sir. He says he's using an analogy of using a ruler. Are you talking about the first 6 inches or the last 6 inches?
It makes no difference. It's still 6. What I'm trying to say, and I just want the standard to be held to everyone in the same way that Tampa's here today. That's all I want.
I'm just not quite sure how to answer that, Councilman. I mean, listen, you all are asking us to do something that is very different than what we normally do. There's not too many MOUs that I've seen so far, and I'm not saying there aren't any, that are doing that. Okay, so to your point, I would hope that we would treat every MOU the same. I mean, we're not trying to single out Tampa as bad guys. We're saying there's a process here.
Excuse me, Commissioner, I never said that. What I'm saying is that in the future, your commission, this commission that we sit in this body, is not going to be the same individuals here. And what I'm saying is that I want to make sure that what we're asking for, what your government or any other government here asks for, it has the same rules. And I want to set it up for the future to be the same way. That's all I'm asking. Not anything different, not anything beneficial to Tampa, not anything derogatory to any other member government, just the same, that's all.
And if each situation is similar to this, I would agree, but not all situations are similar.
I
That's all I'm
understand
saying.
that. I
So
understand
to just say it's going to apply all over the place, the same, is not fair to say at this point. But I think your point is that we try to be fair in the similar circumstances. I agree with you.
Correct. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so the maker of the motion, do you want to withdraw that motion and restate a new motion to include the desire by Councilman Miranda to make it applicable in all agreements going forward?
That's a second motion.
Do you want to do a separate motion? Okay, we
Why
can
don't
do
we do a
that.
separate motion?
Okay, we can do that. Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Councilwoman Rice, seconded by Commissioner Eggers.
This one.
And the exact language, if you could read it again.
Within 1 year of the execution date of this agreement, Tampa Bay Water must acknowledge by board resolution that the benefits provided by TAP, including the functions of the TAP recovery wells, are regional in nature. If the board fails to make such an acknowledgement with 6 votes, then the agreement shall be of no further force or effect. Neither Tampa Bay Water nor Tampa shall have any further obligations pursuant to the agreement.
Madam Chair?
Okay, comments?
No,
Commissioner
I
Eggers?
think, I mean, that's how I understand it, and I just want to make sure I don't see Pinellas County's commissioner here, or Pinellas County's attorney here.
He's in the
Well,
back.
Then he's hiding, good. Okay, great. Good to see you, Joe. So is the understanding that was just stated, is that the latest position from our perspective as Pinellas County?
You gotta come to the podium.
I guess that means yes, so I'm fine with the
Can I just
motion.
ask, since this affects the agreement with the city of Tampa, could you give us your comments?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jan McLean, Assistant City Attorney with the City of Tampa. Of course, that would not be the position of the city to use that opt-out. If it is the pleasure of the board to use that opt-out, the city would request that we include, and I think you might agree, It would be the last sentence that's in the opt-out that's in your packet. Any payment that has been made by Tampa to Tampa Bay Water in accordance with paragraph 3 shall be refunded to Tampa within 30 days after the cancellation. That way, if you're canceling the agreement and we've made any payment towards the assignment of rights, that we would be refunded those payments.
Okay, so now we have I'm going to ask Councilman Miranda, as the representative of the city of Tampa, are you offering that as an amendment?
I'm not against what's on the board, what's on the floor now, but I would like some assurances that if we do something and this board is not here, this individual for whatever reason say no, and I'm on the city of Tampa's on the hook, what am I supposed to do then? Swallow it?
You mean, you're talking about the dollars that you pay?
sir.
Madam Chair, could I offer one suggestion? And I
Yes.
realize there's a motion pending, but we might consider asking Ms. McLean, Ms. Wallace, and Mr. Morrissey just to step outside. It's very clear what is being requested in terms of adjusting the language. They may be able to come back something that's consensus for all the member governments.
This is policy.
Madam,
think,
I think we're ready to vote. I think what
I think we
Councilman
are ready
Miranda
to
is
vote.
asking is not something we can take care of in this memorandum, that every other requirement be 6. I think that's something we have to take outside
We'll
of this.
take up, yeah, we need to, that needs to be a motion not within the context of the MOU at all. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I think we're agreeing with this, but I just want to make sure that the language, there will be from time to time other points along the way after the first year, that there will be, whether it's a year later or 6 months when there's a critical juncture, that we will need to continue making that reaffirmation to keep the project going. I don't want this necessarily to be the only one, because we could get a year down the road and we're saying, well, we still have 3 or 4 things that are still being determined. And I mean, so we say yes, and those things turn out to be a detriment. Then what are our options? So I just think we need to make sure that that we obviously we're treating this responsibly, but at the same time that there will be key points along the way that we have to keep reaffirming this regional benefit. And again, just so the record shows, normally all of this is done up front, and this is a different procedure that we're doing. So there will be steps along the way that keep reaffirming this project's regional benefit.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I ask Ms. McLean to come back to the podium, please? To restate what she just said regarding, I want to make a separate motion. After this motion is voted on, I'm going to make this, and I want the board to understand what
Well, I
the motion
think
is.
you
so I'm
want
asking her
this,
to come back.
I think you want this to be an amendment to the motion.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't,
I want to add an amendment to this motion, if I
Okay.
may. Ms. McLean, would you state that again, please?
Yes, I can state that. Then I had a response to Commissioner Eggers' statement. The sentence that we were requesting that would be added to what Councilwoman Rice read, at the minimum, is what we would be requesting. Any payment made by Tampa to Tampa Bay Water in accordance with paragraph 3, which is a reference to the MOU, shall be refunded to Tampa within 30 days of the cancellation of this agreement.
I make that as an amendment to the motion.
Well, I would strike the words at a minimum, because I don't understand why you say at a minimum, because does that mean there's something else?
No,
So-
if I said at a minimum, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Let me reread it one more time. Any payment made by Tampa to Tampa Bay Water in accordance with paragraph 3 shall be refunded to Tampa within 30 days of the cancellation of this agreement.
I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion, and it was made by Councilman Miranda, seconded by the mayor. And I'll just say the mayor because you're the only mayor on here. There is now discussion on the amendment.
Yeah.
Commissioner Oakers.
What money are we talking about paying back?
That's the 7, well, whatever number that is, if we get to that paragraph and the number changes, it's whatever number's in paragraph 3, starting at 7 million.
Paragraph 3, the 7 million. Right. Okay. We're going to vote on the amendment first. Oh, yes, thank you.
Is it our intention to come back each year
No.
to vote to determine whether this is still a regional project and whether we want to continue? And would we revisit at each year whether or not we would have to refund Tampa whatever they've put into it? Should we decide the project's no longer has regional benefits?
I mean, that's my understanding, that we're coming back every year after the execution of the agreement. Is that, what's your understanding, Mr. Dunbar?
I don't have the language that Councilwoman Rice read. I have no idea where we are in
It's
that
a
regard.
question.
Yeah, well, and the only comment I made is it was from time to time. It wasn't necessarily every year thereafter, because I don't know if there's going to be anything. There may be something after 6 months that says, hey, we need to reaffirm this thing. But if you want to say annually, that's fine. I don't really, but I think we just need to say from time to time, periodically, whatever the wording is, there will be times that we need to reaffirm that this project, I think Tampa would be looking for that reaffirmation that, yeah, you still think this is a.
Well, we do it now with the reservoir, with the desal plant. We do it with all the projects. And now, I mean,
McLean again.
yes.
Jan McLean again. This was the comment that I wanted to respond to Commissioner Eggers and Councilwoman Rice. The date that's in the opt-out clause in number 1 is no later than June 30th, 2020. What that encompasses, as the city has laid out in our timeline, is all the feasibility, all the permitting that's anticipated to be completed at that time, which would be answering the questions that you might not feel that you have those answers to in front of you today. So the termination clause that Councilwoman Rice had suggested, which is within a year from the date of this execution, would be prior to that time. And so to extend it out to June 2020, which is what the city's offer was, would be to encompass the most amount of information possible to bring that back to you. So you would have that time to make the determination as to the continuation of the agreement or not. But to come back on an annual basis is not something that I think the city would entertain at this time. This is.
And I think to your point, if 2020, that June timeframe is a critical date, and that's the one we want to define now, that when we get closer to that date and we make the vote, then we'll probably, I think, I just don't want to have to do this every year and a half, reopen our MOU, but I think there will be, need to have a mechanism that says, well, we didn't quite make that date, and we're not ready to opt in again, or whatever that time. Maybe you guys are behind schedule. Maybe it's 3 months later. And so I just, there needs to be some flexibility in there. And then at that point, you'll be telling us, or we'll be issuing other concerns, perhaps, who knows, because I'm not smart enough to know where we are going to be in a year, that we need to do it again. We need to have another date. It's now whatever it happens to be. So this is a fluid project. This is not, no pun intended. This is really just we don't know for sure how it's going to unfold. So we just need to provide some flexibility. That's all I'm saying.
And just to that point, you're on point, and we heard you when you told us that a couple of meetings ago. You have in there, in the MOU, an annual report from the city to Tampa Bay Water to tell you exactly where we are, to tell you what we've accomplished and what timeline that we're working on at that point. And then what we did was build into the June 2020 so that we would have all that information available after even the first annual.
So then it would just become a negotiating point at that time. If we're not comfortable, we would threaten to vote against it unless you guys gave us the comfort that we needed, right? I mean, that's really what, and I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of when we get to that date in next year. If we have not gotten comfortable that it is still continuing to be a regional project,
then you could vote against it.
Then we can vote against it, or not vote to affirm it, right? And then it dies.
That would be the board's prerogative,
Okay.
yes, sir.
And then at that point, you all might say, well, we have 3 more months and we need it. And then we can vote to extend it and say in that agreement at that time that we're going to have another look at it in 3 months. We could do that at that time to maintain the project, or your alternative would be to kill it. And we may not be ready to do that at that point.
Well, and as a lawyer, we can modify and write anything that you direct us to modify.
Okay.
So
Yes,
we are
you
very
guys are
creative in
really
that
good.
manner.
You're right.
We're standing in front of you and we hear information that needs to be
Amen.
addressed, we can do that.
Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. Y'all, we're out of discussion. We're now going to vote on the amendment by,
The amendment.
we're voting on the amendment by Councilman Miranda, seconded by the mayor. Yes,
But it has
Commissioner Peters.
So just for clarification, the amendment is then the onus of fiscal responsibility if we choose to opt in versus opt out would be, the onus would then be on Tampa Bay Water. And then I would have a question for the attorney if that's still okay.
Yes.
My understanding is that the amendment was to repay Tampa monies that they put in. And then we get to the second question, Commissioner, that you're asking me.
Okay, the second question is, when we started, there didn't seem to be an issue if we chose to opt out and the onus was on Tampa Bay Water, that there wasn't a fiscal responsibility, but it didn't seem that there was a big question on now an opt-in. So why the change on the fiscal responsibility? So if there wasn't that, if it's the opt-out, why is Tampa Bay Water not responsible for reimbursement? And then if it's an opt-in, it is. I don't understand the difference. If you're confident enough that this is going to work after a year and that we're either going to opt in or opt out, why the change on the fiscal, why the change on that? Because if it's so simple, we're going to opt out, you can just come back and opt out. But now that it's an opt-in, I don't understand the shift on financial responsibility.
The agreement provides currently, before we get to these issues that might amend it, that Tampa is to pay money to Tampa Bay Water. The opt-out provision that the member government lawyers have as the main issue provides for repayment. I had understood but I've only heard it read, that the language being offered as the main version of issue 1 did not provide for the repayment, and that's what Councilman Miranda's motion does, is add it back so it is consistent with what we did with opt-out. Opt-in will also have the same repayment if you choose not to opt in.
Thank you for the clarification.
And the
Okay,
final point on that, are we changing then within 1 year of the execution to a date certain, June 2020?
My understanding of Councilwoman Rice's motion is different from what we offered, which is the June date. She is proposing 1 year from the date of execution.
I'm fine with June 30th, 2020.
Yep, good. Okay.
Okay,
Seconder is fine too.
So the
It's just a
first part.
clarification.
Yeah, I think it's just the lead phrase.
Okay. So we're voting on the amendment, not the motion. We're voting on the amendment
I have a
about
quick
the.
question about
Oh,
the
yes,
amendment.
okay.
Does a local government or agency that applies to co-funding with SwiftMud and the subsequent project fails or the project gets denied, is there an expectation to reimburse SwiftMud?
I don't know, we'd have to call our SwiftMud expert.
That's it.
That was a one-word answer.
Wow. Become a comedy show.
Okay. Any
But we
further-
don't have to refund if Representative Toledo's appropriations request for the 1.6 million, if that becomes a way to fund this project, then we don't have to refund that because that's not money paid to Tampa Bay Water.
Well, but the interesting thing about the legislature is that money has to flow through a state agency to get to them. And I believe that would be SwiftMud, is that correct?
It's DEP.
DEP
flowing through
or SwiftMud? DEP. So that's how that works, and probably would not have to be paid back.
Okay.
Okay. We're on the amendment. Can we vote on the amendment? Okay. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Show that passed. We are now on the motion by Councilwoman Rice, seconded by Commissioner Eggers. on the opt-out provision. Are we ready? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Show that pass. Okay, good work.
We had started on number 2,
We did start on number 2.
but Commissioner Oakley had the questions about the opt-out and that you might have questions to be answered. So I think that gets us back to number 2. And now with the opt-out privilege or the requirement to now opt in after the first year, after you get questions answered, the consensus is from all of the lawyers is shown there as number 2.
Okay,
Probably would take a motion if you wanted to put that into the MOU as well.
okay, let's make a motion on number 2. If someone would offer that motion on number 2.
So moved.
We have a motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilman Miranda. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I know what that motion is, please.
It's the wording that's in your packet on a provision to clarify the 20 MGD benefit from the Harney Canal.
That what? That it would.
And the essence of it is, Commissioner, whatever they've got, we get, but we don't know what that is for the reasons we were talking about
Right.
earlier. Part of those issues that you'd be looking for in the coming year before you moved on.
Question, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Starkey?
I just want to make sure that we're covering ourselves about the commingling of, the possible commingling of water. And I'm not sure this language covers that. So I just wanted that to be clear.
Oh, you wanted to add the word injected.
Yeah. Because when this says any water developed by tap, well, that could be the water that's up on the surface. What we're talking about is the water that, the water that's being injected, and I understand that there's a
And that's
slight
City of
possibility that could go through the aquifer and come up in the Harney, and we just want to keep that from happening.
Can the city of Tampa give us, they're okay?
Yes.
Okay. So
That just
we're
strikes
Accept
us
that
out.
as a friendly amendment.
friendly amendment. Actually, let's just, since it's just one word, we'll just remove your motion and have a new motion with the addition of the word injected, which is seconded by Councilman Miranda.
Repeat
And-
that then. I just that part, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the language now.
Yes, okay, so in the last sentence, it would say Tampa will not permit any injected water.
Okay.
Right.
I'd like to add surface and injected water.
Oh.
I don't care about
No.
surface.
That
Surface
would
is good
change.
water.
Well, they've definitely always said the surface water would not.
Yeah.
We know that, but you need, I think to include it, it's not a big
Yeah,
deal.
put it in writing.
That's,
Is that,
then, what we're adding is the injected.
okay,
Okay.
okay, injected or surface. Okay, well, you've redone your motion again to include surface.
Yes.
Okay, any other comments on number 2? All, without any further comment, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Okay, we're on number 3.
This gets us to the nutrient credit issue. I want to acknowledge Jane Wallace, Joe Morrissey, and Jan McLean, who worked on this language on behalf of the group, and this is the consensus language they came up with to present to you.
Okay. Comments? Number 3? That was a consensus wording that we put together. Seems okay? Okay, can I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by the mayor, second by Commissioner Smith. On number 3, without further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that pass.
She.
No, I was just going to say, number 4 is
Oh, we're on
a big
number
issue.
4.
Could we take a 5-minute break?
Actually, and there is lunch being provided today, and we will do a working lunch again.
Okay.
So do you want to do that now? Or 10 or 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. 10 or 15 minutes right now. I hope the food's back there, but I think it is.
It's freezing in here. I need a blanket.
We've had our short break. We're ready to get back started, and we will continue, Mr. Dunbar, with number 4.
Madam Chairman, there are 3 remaining issues. Number 4 deals with the service areas and the relationship between the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County and what is served there. I might just point out that 5 deals with the funding request to SwiftMud, and that if there is a cost above $350 million, what happens then? And item 6, which was the indebtedness issue that we had looked at and done some estimated calculations on, the language in 6 is new language that was offered by the city of Tampa. So with those 3 remaining items, number 4 is the sale of water and between the city of Tampa and Hillsborough County.
Okay, we are on number 4. Councilwoman Rice?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So an item that I wanted to discuss because some new information has come to light. When we had our last meeting, the executive committee meeting that served as our workshop, we talked about the grandfathered in interconnections that the city of Tampa has to serve the areas of the county outside of Tampa city limits, where it makes sense to do that because it just costs too much money for Tampa Bay Water to bring in the piping to these areas. And that sounded very reasonable, but I was left under the impression that these connections were few in number and isolated. And I think that the number the volume that was referred to going through these interconnections, I think I heard 2 MGD. And if you will look at the map I just distributed.
Oh, wow.
You'll see, and for anyone who's watching, thank you. This is available on the City of Tampa website. You just click on the right for, water service area. You'll see in green, the green is the area outside Tampa city limits. And you also notice that there's a green, you have to this map's a little hard to read, but if you see the green boundary line, that is the Tampa water service area. You'll see in green where Tampa's currently serving Hillsborough customers. And you'll also see, as you go up north on the map, there's a whole large area there around New Tampa that would be a service area for Tampa. And this is a lot bigger than the impression I was left with at our last meeting. And I'd like to clarify what percentage of the water that Tampa produces goes to these areas, because it seems like without us including in the memorandum of understanding some type of cap or restriction on the volume or to new customers, it seems like Tampa's becoming a competing water supplier to Tampa Bay Water. Does anyone else share, my colleagues, does anyone else share, has anyone else seen this map? Am I alone in thinking that what was characterized to us at the last meeting is different from what we see on this map?
Well,
What I would,
I would say all except one of these areas are in my district, but all very older areas of Tampa. I think it's Egypt Lake is in here. I'll have to look at city. Brad. Town and country, and then the one on the right, very sparsely, is Palm River, of which we have just put in, I think the county has just put in lines in Palm River, haven't we? Yeah, we just restored water back to Palm River. So that one green area on the right, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm looking at our guys, there may still be some county water, some water coming in there, but I'm not sure. So maybe y'all could clarify for us exactly what's going on.
May I ask Ms. McLean to answer why and how?
Jay McLean with the City of Tampa again. Respectfully, Councilwoman Rice, there's two issues that you brought up. One that we spoke to with regard to the limited number of interconnects with Hillsborough County, which my understanding is that there are 13 interconnects for areas that are right at our service area boundary, where Tampa Bay Water could not provide water, the county could not provide water, and so the city provides water. That is the one that we have the succinct number of connections, and the volume to which you referred is the approximately 2 MGD on an annual average. Now, the map is our service area. The service area, which has been in existence since 1974, and the service area, which was submitted to Tampa Bay Water, both at the time of, earlier than Tampa Bay Water, but at the time of the creation of the interlocal agreement that we are operating under now, it is identified in the master water supply contract, which all of the members had to submit. You'll find, and I'm sure you're aware, that especially municipalities have under the statute the ability to go 5 miles into a county, but they have to have an interlocal agreement. And that's what you see reflected there, which is our established service area that we've had for all those years. They are county residents, but they are city water customers. And so to the extent that we are not looking to expand our service area, we are only working within that which has already been approved by Tampa Bay Water at the time of the interlocal, and which we are operating now. So I'm not entirely sure what your concerns are as far as the service area. I also went on to confirm that other municipalities, such as the City of St. Petersburg, has a service area which expands beyond its municipal boundaries and has wholesale customers also outside of the city. So it's a similar fact pattern that you'll find in the provision of water between utilities.
St. Pete's not applying to SwiftMud for our own independent water supply. So it was of concern to me because it was clearly stated at the last workshop. The impression was given that these were isolated, grandfathered in connections. I totally understand your logic. I totally understand how this came about. But what's grandfathered in is that these interconnections can provide up to 8 MGD of surplus water. We heard the number 2 MGD. And it seems like this really kind of goes back to the core of what Tampa wants. When over a year ago, Tampa went directly to the legislature for enabling legislation to allow the city of Tampa to sell water to anyone. And clearly, when you look at the service area map, we see areas that are also areas of potential growth and development.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. If I might, that's exactly what you are correct, is the except for the 8 MGD, I'm not sure where you get that. But
It's in the water supply agreement.
in the 13 connections that we have with the city, if Tampa Bay Water wished to supply any of those connections, the city would certainly enter into an agreement to terminate its provision of water to those isolated areas. It's not going to change its service area. It's not going to expand it. The interlocal agreement between Hillsborough County and the city has had amendments over the years. But what we are looking at is just the service area that's been in existence and was submitted to Tampa Bay Water.
At the workshop, when we proposed a potential restriction on volume or new connections, there was tremendous, unambiguous pushback from the city of Tampa at that meeting. So I'll yield the floor to my colleagues.
Commissioner Oakley, then Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I have been concerned about the same thing. I heard the 2 million gallons, but I also heard there was going to be a a lot more that could be sold to Hillsborough County by the city of Tampa. What concerns me is that doesn't pay the debt down that we all owe to Tampa Bay Water, our debt that provides water throughout our region. So if we're not paying debt down, that even works against the city of Tampa. Well, if they're out of it, then I guess it doesn't work against them. But Hillsborough County, if they're buying water that doesn't go through Tampa Bay Water, they're not paying any of that debt down. So I would be concerned why they'd even do that. So that's a big concern of mine also.
So on those isolated interconnections, it's because there was no water to be provided from Tampa Bay Water to the people that live in those areas. And so if the city did not provide water, there wasn't any supply that would be available to them. Like I said, if Tampa Bay Water determined that it could supply any of those connections, the city would be more than willing to relinquish the services to any and all of those connections that are surrounding our area that we currently serve. Now, our service area, like I said, will remain the same or shrink. It's not going to expand that I am aware of, and the city has no intention of, because this is the service area that we've had since, I said, the interlocal agreement with the county since the 70s. But to your point, sir, if Tampa Bay Water could come forward and serve those areas, we would be certainly willing to do that.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Smith?
Yes, thank you. And to be clear, just to clarify, this map just shows an area around Tampa. It does not, these are not the boundaries of the county. The county is much bigger than the area that you see here. So there's whole, it's not this percentage of the county that's served. This is just a little bit bigger than the city. And in fact, the areas outside this map are where the growth is happening and where, you know, the real growth will be consuming Tampa Bay Water.
Thank you. Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, at least this helps to paint a little bit of a picture, maybe not the whole picture, so I appreciate you bringing that forward. So there was a question about how much this 13 connections or connections, whatever they're called, could actually supply in terms of MGD. We heard two, and now I've heard 8. So is there a confirmation on that?
You're asking the lawyer. I've been...
I'm not asking the attorney. I'm asking whoever has the information.
I was looking for... From the city's perspective, it's our understanding that it is approximately 2 MGD that we provide, annual average, that we provide currently.
Okay, that's answer number 1. What's the second part is how much could it supply? How much could those 13 connections supply in water?
It's an engineering.
I guess what I'm getting at here is that in our county, that there are cities from time to time like to annex new areas. And I don't know the nature of that in your county, so I would imagine that within your service area, there could be additional annexation, and even outside your service area, I guess there could be annexation, right? I mean, I don't know how that works. It does in our county. I'll leave it at that. So the expanding the area and then having the supply to do it, I think does create some questions as to, again, I'm going to ask a question of Tampa Bay Water in a minute. When we did this agreement 20 years ago, we didn't think it was a good idea to service those areas. What is our position today in terms of that ability to service? But I'm just curious about that growth potential that you have in your own city, because it is a big county.
There is, as I said, there is no annexation indications as far as for the city. We already extend up into New Tampa, up to the Pasco line. So our service area is intended to remain the same in the foreseeable future. There is no intention to expand the service area. Any growth that might happen within our service area would already be contemplated in population projections that Tampa Bay Water does and that we do as a utility to try to accommodate those within our service area, not beyond that.
And those 13 connections will accommodate all of those needs.
The 13 connections are, as we said, just at the boundaries of our service area. So we do not intend to expand or increase those connections in any sense.
These are all logical questions in terms of expansion of what you're doing now. And so we just try to understand what the capability is again. Because we don't know what you don't know right now, apparently, what you might do down the road in terms of expansion of your city limits.
Oh, I can tell you right now.
The city limits?
I'll get to, they are not expanding outside their city limits. If you want to have another MOU about that, we could do that.
As one commissioner.
Yes.
We just confirmed with utility director for Hillsborough County, who's not in attendance, that the current flow is 2 MGD. And so I've just asked if we could confirm that that would be the expectation of the maximum quantity at those connections.
Well,
and we're asking him.
But we don't know that yet.
There's 2 MGD through the interconnections, I think another 16 MGD to Hillsborough County customers generally. But then there's the Tampa-Hillsborough County Interconnect Water Supply Agreement that gives you up to 8 MGD at the delivery point connections, so. Actually, I have a question, just, those are a lot of technical issues, but I wanted to ask our attorney, Mr. Khan, I know you've been around a long time and you were here during the formation of the Tampa Bay Water regional body. In your opinion, does this project set a precedent for other member governments doing the same, bringing the same type of proposal forward?
If I could.
Yes, please.
This MOU, this agreement, would set a precedent of trying to resolve issues within the interlocal agreement, negotiating a solution to an issue that has come before us in a way that does not violate the interlocal agreement. That's the first point to make, that through the efforts of the member government attorneys and board members, we are addressing this issue in a way that is consistent with the interlocal agreement. And I think that's a good precedent to set. With regard to this specific agreement, there are unique provisions in the interlocal agreement that deal with Tampa that are not present for any other member government. And so in my judgment, this particular MOU, the circumstance that's presented is unique in that Tampa is unique among all the members among Tampa Bay Water. And that was agreed to back in 1998, that Tampa would have a different membership than the other members. So, I see it as a precedent in the sense of resolving things in-house in a way that's cooperative and within the interlocal agreement. But I never say never, but I think it would be hard for another member to make the same arguments as Tampa is making because of the unique status of Tampa.
Thank you.
Good points.
Madam Chair, if I could clarify, one of the statements that Councilman Rice made was, I'm sure it was not meant to be misleading or inaccurate, but the 16 MGD is not to Hillsborough County customers, it's to the City of Tampa customers that are within our service area but reside within Hillsborough County.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you,
It
Councilwoman
seems
Rice.
like we could address the issue of concerns about the how we would want to restrict the volume of water going to new customers in the service area. It seems like one way to address that would be including the last couple of sentences of the St. Pete legal version that's in the document before you. So I would move that we would include those two sentences, starting with, if any excess potable water should be available, Tampa shall not sell or provide water to customers outside of Tampa's municipal boundaries within Tampa Bay Water's service area, except for existing volumes to existing customers through existing interconnections in areas in Hillsborough County that Tampa Bay Water has determined Tampa Bay Water is unable to serve. Tampa shall not sell or provide any water to any third parties or entities outside of Tampa Bay Water's service area.
Okay. Jean, did you want to respond?
I have my colleague behind me from Hillsborough County as well that I think he would like to speak. But the sentence which starts, Tampa shall not sell or provide water to customers outside of Tampa's municipal boundaries within Tampa Bay Water service area, except for existing volumes to existing customers through existing interconnections in areas of Hillsborough County that Tampa Bay Water has determined Tampa Bay Water is unable to serve, mixes the two concepts.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to agree that we cannot sell water outside of our municipal boundaries because that is our service area to the extent that our service area boundaries are already established. As far as existing volumes to existing customers through existing interconnections in Hillsborough County, that Tampa Bay Water has determined that Tampa Bay Water is unable to preserve refers, I'm sure, to the 13 interconnects. So if there was a way to divorce those concepts, I don't know what Hillsborough County will say, but we could agree to the 13 interconnect restrictions, but certainly not to the restrictions outside of our municipal boundaries, because that is our service area, and as customers come in, we have to be able to serve them.
I'd like to hear from my attorney as well.
Okay, and I think, okay, you want to come forward first, and then the Hillsborough County attorney.
Good, I was getting in line.
You're in line.
Jane Wallace, City of St. Petersburg. The issue is a policy discussion. You've got two versions of language in front of you, which we can parse words right now, but I guess the fundamental issue is the policy discussion of if you want to allow TAP to progress, which has the potential to create excess potable water, do you want to put restrictions on how that excess potable water may be used, because there is a chance that Tampa may become a competitor as a water supplier with you. Now, there are restrictions in the interlocal agreement of who Tampa can and cannot sell water to, and there are other various contracts out there. But what it comes down to is if you're going to allow the assignment that will create the water, do you want to put restrictions in place on how that water can be used? It can be language such as grandfathering in existing volumes. It can be grandfathering in existing areas. And I know there are two different issues. One is the expansive service area. The other is the interconnects, which I believe provide water outside of the service area. Am I correct in that? The interconnects provide water outside of the service area. Is that correct?
Outside of our service?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so you've got the existing Hillsborough County residents who are getting water from Tampa within Tampa service area. Then you have interconnects, which provide water to Hillsborough County residents who live outside of Tampa service area within unincorporated Hillsborough County. Those are two separate issues. And the policy discussion, without even looking at the language that was provided, the policy discussion that I believe is before the board is what you're willing to let Tampa do with the water it's creating through the TAP program. And that's a policy decision for you as a board.
Okay, next in line. was Ed Helvinson with Hillsborough County.
Ed Helvinson, Hillsborough Assistant County Attorney. The issue of the relationship between the county and Tampa goes back well into the 70s as far as a very complex set of interconnection agreements. And a lot of this predates Tampa Bay Water. And if St. Pete's language is unacceptable to the county from the standpoint that we could not agree to a situation where, in fact, I would read this as precluding Tampa from allowing any new sales within Hillsborough County, which is obviously unacceptable, their language. But I guess to Councilwoman Rice's key point, we have to allow, within the 13 interconnections that we're talking about here, we have to allow for some reasonable level of additional growth. We can't just say an arbitrary cap at 2 MGD and cut off all future development within those areas. As has been indicated, if Tampa Bay Water wants to take over any of these interconnections, that's fine. That's fine with Hillsborough, that's fine with Tampa. But what we can't do is sit here today and agree to some absolute cap on the quantities in those interconnections, which could potentially cut off further growth within those areas.
Thank you. Okay, that is the attorneys. Mayor Marlowe was next, then Councilman Miranda.
I've been carefully listening to a lot of this discussion, and I understand the issue of the interconnects specifically as it applies to areas that are within the Hillsborough County water distribution area, and trying to provide some limits to that and to maintaining an agreement that Tampa won't go out and sell to third parties. But with all due respect to Commissioner Rice, to try to cripple Tampa's ability to provide water within their established service area that they have had for decades is just totally unacceptable. That's a bridge too far.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Miranda?
1974, population of Tampa, 20% of them didn't even have sewers. 15% of them didn't even have city water. That council that was with Jan Platt and Sandy Freeman and the rest of us got together and...
Were you on the council then?
Yes, ma'am.
I just had to say that.
But I was not connected solely from 74 to present. I was disconnected a few times. Just like a water faucet on and off. But thank you for bringing me up my age. So what I'm saying is that we passed ordinances to make sure that everybody got connected because we wanted to help the environment and help certain things. And along those lines, the legislature, I don't remember what year passed, that if we had trunk lines in the vicinity of a development in the county, we were obligated to service the area. These are the areas that are being addressed to. The city of Tampa did not go out and have a door knocking on doors saying, we want to sell you water. That never happened that way. We were asked to do it, and we did it. So now for helping someone, from what I hear, they're saying, you can't do that no more. We're not out selling water to anyone. We're not, as far as I know anyway, we're not out there selling water to Baum and Waimama. We're not trying to compete with anyone. We were given what we applied to in 1998 when we joined Tampa Bay Water, that this was the areas of service that we had. So now, in my mind, I'm saying, are we saying that in the light green areas around the orange areas, that if you have a development coming in, that one part of that's going to be serviced by Tampa and the new development within that area by another agency like Tampa Bay Water? You know what the cost would be to do that?
Millions.
I'm just saying that. So that's what you want to do? I can say, listen, I won't give another drop of water to any of those areas other than the ones that we have, and you run your own lines and see what happens. I don't want to do that. I don't want to play that kind of game. I want to tell the facts exactly how they are. It was established in 74 when we joined. Those were our service areas. Everyone agreed to it. And I'm not here to change that. I don't want no water to go outside the service area that we have now. None, not one drop. And that's what I'm admitting to the city of Tampa is willing to say, not one drop.
Okay. Yes.
On that,
Commissioner Oakley.
what we heard before was only about 2 million gallons and they were going to hold it basically that. I didn't know there was other service areas or areas that were not developed. And today we hear there's 8 million gallons that could be sold in those areas. So, I mean, it's changed from what we thought we were hearing, that it was going to be pretty much limited to those areas that were built out, I thought. Now there's a lot more development that can come in those areas. We were not told that earlier.
I can tell you, because they're in my district, these areas are built out, pretty much. But I think what they're saying is redevelopment's coming in. You know, you're going through it in your county, where you're taking a very old built-out area and you're putting in maybe multifamily or, you know, the density changes because of that.
Yeah, we're doing some of that, but most of our development is new development.
And so is ours, but I'm saying, I don't know of any redevelopment or huge development in any of these areas, except for a little bit in Town and Country that's getting redeveloped. But that's it. I mean, these are older, established neighborhoods where there isn't much more you can go. It's not like there aren't any pasture lands or, you know, empty fields to put development in. And I think it's, you know, that's all in the areas where you can't even see on this map. You can see where the density areas are in Hillsborough County where they're developing. If you saw the whole map, you'd really say, wow. Okay, next comments. Any further comments?
I just had one question.
Yes.
I'm assuming that our position that we took when Tampa Bay Water was formed is the same today in terms of providing water for the areas that are outside of the city limits, inside of their growth area, their service area, and outside of their service area. Apparently, we do serve some areas outside the service area too, or Hillsborough County, Tampa, city of Tampa does. But are we still in that same position that we can't supply waters to those areas?
Well, I think, and I can maybe, if there's more clarity, maybe our engineering manager can answer the question, Mr. Kennedy. But I think when those were put in over the years, there was a certain need that was established, and it was determined that they would be met through these agreements. And yes, as time goes on, things do change, and there's been a question about how much is the potential capacity through those lines. And I think those questions, maybe we can defer to Mr. Kennedy to see if he can help.
From a historical and not a contractual perspective, back in the 90s when the governance documents were being drafted, the engineers and utility directors received an assignment to provide certain provisions to the attorneys who were drafting the documents, having to do, among other things, with exclusivity of service, and there had to be certain exceptions to that. And from time to time since 1998, we've evaluated exceptions to exclusivity. For example, when a PSC-regulated well is offered for purchase. This particular item that you're talking about today was an established service area that predated and was already in existence during governance and is generally, or at that time was in an urban area, and for us to run a line in there would require Hillsborough County to accept and open a new point of connection that would be provided by Tampa Bay Water, and they're several miles away from our nearest lines. I hope this helps answer your question.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, well, I really don't even understand the direction of this. We have these areas of Hillsborough County residents that are getting their drinking water from this system that has been in place for decades. There may be a small amount of growth in those areas. If so, I can't possibly support something that would say those people aren't going to get any water unless and until Tampa Bay Water does some really expensive piping to them, when it would just be so much simpler to just say, let's just stick with these areas that we have and allow things to proceed as they always have. So I couldn't support any restrictions of that in terms of the volume, existing volumes, existing interconnections, whatever. Just leave it the same as it's always been.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments? And we are on number 4. And do I have a motion to approve the language in number 4?
I move that.
Motion by
Yeah,
Commissioner.
the first one, not the,
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Mayor Marlowe, to approve item 4, the first paragraph from Tampa and Hillsborough Legal. Any further discussion?
So we're leaving it at the connections in the area in Hillsborough County adjoining the city of Tampa service area. So there will be some county area as well that's not in the service area of Tampa being serviced, correct? That's what that said.
Through the current interconnections.
But just with the current interconnections. And there's still, I've not heard anybody say what the limitations of that ability are. I mean, we're saying it can do 2 million. Nobody said that 8 million is incorrect, but to your point, I think is that we're giving up the right to produce the water, so we're just trying to make sure we understand clearly, I think it's fair, where the water could possibly go to, so.
Completely understand. I guess I could ask, has it changed over the years, the 2 MGD?
To address the issue that's come up, Hillsborough and Tampa have a suggestion that might be helpful to the board if you have a minute.
Okay. Well, we do have a motion on the floor in a second, but we'll entertain some other wording if you have it.
I have conferred with my colleagues from Hillsborough County, and we offer the sentence to be added to the language that is the subject of the motion. The City of Tampa, Tampa Bay Water, and Hillsborough County shall provide a report to Tampa Bay Water within 1 year of the execution of this agreement to determine whether Tampa Bay Water can serve the current 13 interconnections between the City of Tampa and Hillsborough County.
I'm, okay, I think that's good language.
all right, I'll accept that as a amended.
Okay,
motion,
do you
or-
want to withdraw your motion, then just make a new motion with the added language?
Okay, I'll withdraw and make a new motion with the
Okay,
added language.
second, now we're on discussion. Commissioner Eggers.
Our attorney, do you have any issues with that proposed language?
Not from the legal standpoint, no.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Okay.
How about our director?
Well, to look at this and to study it and come back to the board, we can certainly do that. And there was also the question about the maximum capacity, and I'm not sure if, Mr. Kennedy, do we have that number? We don't know that. So, yeah, I mean, we're not prepared today to do any more than that.
Still more questions, okay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed,
Opposed?
Opposed?
and I voted aye. So let's all raise our hands. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say no. Okay, it is 5-4. On to the next one.
Number 5 deals with the cooperative funding request to be made to SwiftMud over the life of the project. There is the consensus language that 5 of the 6 member government lawyers reached, and that, or that all but one of the member government lawyers agreed with. Then there is an alternative by the city of St. Petersburg. This is the issue, Commissioner Starkey, that you had brought up, I think, at our December meeting about the maximum amount to be applied for, and that's the language that appears first.
Yep. Okay, we are on number 5. Discussion? Questions? We're on questions. On number 5. Councilwoman Rice, you're recognized.
Again, when we jump right into technical issues that, the board ends up discussing more like how we do something and less time on should we do something. I guess this point is as good a point as any to find out what happened with Tampa asking Representative Toledo to apply for 1.6 funding and general funds from the legislature, when I thought at the beginning of this process, when we decided to go through this MOU iterative development, part of that was based on an understanding that Tampa wasn't going to do a runaround to the legislature again. And yet here we are.
Okay, we will now hear from the city of Tampa to respond.
Jan McLean, again, Assistant City Attorney. What you saw was the efforts of the city to make sure that it would be able to have the funding that it needed for the next phase, given this process was instituted by the House of Representatives a couple of years ago, so that you had to submit an application. The application became a bill. The bill travels through its course of committee hearings. That's the only way a request for appropriations could be considered in the House of Representatives. There's a deadline on submitting those applications, and my understanding was it was February 5th. We came to know this at a very last-minute time frame and submitted a request for that appropriation to put it in the pipeline. It is not meant to be a go-around. It's not the kind of legislative action that precipitated the good work that we've been doing here for the last number of years. What it was in acknowledgement of our still working on this agreement so that we would not potentially be able to apply for cooperative funding. If anybody's taking it as an offense, the city obviously apologizes for any offense taken, but we were following procedure and did that as rapidly as we could, which just immediately preceded this meeting. Like I said, the deadline was February the 5th. That money that was applied for is 50% of the projected cost of the next phase of feasibility for the 60% design. It would be the same amount that if we were able to apply for cooperative funding that we might be able to recognize from the Water Management District. It is not our match. It cannot be a match. That is what the district's rules are with regard to cooperative funding. If the legislature saw fit for us to receive any portion or all of that amount, that would automatically reduce anything that we might be authorized to apply for to the Water Management District. They're still here, so they can confirm that. So for instance, just to do the math, if the next phase of feasibility is 3.2 million, and we potentially could apply to SwiftMud for half of that, which would be the 1.6. This 1.6, if it came through from all these ifs, came through from the legislature, would automatically reduce the amount that we could apply for. So then if we receive this, we might be able to apply for the remaining 1.6, which means the cooperative funding, if it was approved, would only be $800,000. So that is what that piece of legislation is, which is simply an application to run concurrently with the efforts that we are doing here.
Further questions?
No, I did find it disappointing. To me, what I saw was that Tampa's going to go forward with this project regardless of what this board thinks or says. I know it doesn't the appropriations request doesn't rise to the same level as the legislative runaround that took place last January, but it was still confusing, and I understand, I know how a bill becomes a law. I know that there was a deadline to get the appropriations request in, but it was something that yet again, here's this project you wanted us to vote on back in October, and yet even the Thursday before this vote, something new comes across the transom to try to divine what Tampa wants to do and how they want to pay for it. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Mr. Eggers?
Well, just wrestling here with whether to dive into this conversation because we started it today with talking about the interlocal, the MOU agreement, and we dived right into each of these issues, and each of them create a problem, and we're trying to deal with those one by one. Some of them, like the last one, was a 5-4 vote, and whether that will be enough to, when we get to that vote, to not do the agreement is another thing. So, I mean, the discussion about whether this is a good idea moving forward, we're all wrestling with the idea, for me, of doing things a little backwards than we normally do to consider projects at Tampa Bay Water. And if there's another funding source out there, and apparently there seems to be, that allows Tampa to do that and to proceed with the next year and a half worth of work and due diligence, it kind of renders the whole MOU discussion moot, if I'm not mistaken. It just makes them go down a different path that we'll all be comfortable with, because in June 30th of next year, we'll be at a point where we can say, hey, now you've got the big ask, the $175 million, that we're here. We've got other projects. You'll see, we have a long-term master water plan project going on, which, by the way, until December, had a TAP project in it. So we're serious enough about TAP to have it as one of our projects. And it would have still been there, except I think the city of Tampa said that they wouldn't give us the reclaimed water to do that project. So for us, it was a serious project to be considered. And so now we've decided that, that's not on the table. We're still moving forward with our plan, and that may involve an ask of SwiftMud for funding, whatever that project turns out to be. And so we're moving side by side again, and I think that can go ahead. Well, apparently there's another funding source for this money, so we can go ahead. I mean, I'm just saying, I have concerns with the whole idea that we're going to have more than 82 million gallons of water a day being produced. That's what the interlocal agreement says the limit is. So anyway, I have other questions. I don't want to, dive into that conversation right now, but there are some other issues I think that are relevant.
When we get done with all this?
Yeah, and when we get done with all this, it'll
okay.
ultimately get to that. But I
Okay.
mean, it's been brought up, and I think those are some other issues that are relevant.
Okay. Do you have anything else on the,
Madam Chair.
on number 5? I want to make sure he's
Oh,
finished.
okay.
I'm fighting for now.
You are? Okay.
Well, I think part of the challenge is that in order for them to be eligible for cooperative funding, they have to move up in the rankings from low to medium, because I don't think the low projects at SwiftMud get funded. So if they want to get some design money from SwiftMud in the cooperative funding mode, they need to have the approval of the local water authority. So this does need to happen before they can get cooperative funding from SwiftMud.
That's SwiftMud money. We're talking about.
The state,
Okay.
okay, Kathleen was just up there. They don't really fund a whole lot of water projects, at least in the past they haven't, at least in my county.
They may now. The governor now has water projects as his top
Well-
priority. I think that's why maybe different people are applying for dollars.
But they won't get the cooperative funding, I don't believe, without this board moving forward.
Yes. Commissioner Peters.
Thank you. Absolutely what Commissioner Starkey said is true, but as far as the state funding goes, there's no guarantee.
Never.
There's absolutely no guarantee. Nobody knows what the state's going to say they're going to fund and what they're not going to fund, and is it going to be focused on the Indian River Lagoon? Is it going to be focused on Lake Okeechobee? Who knows how that's going to go? So there's no guarantee. And I'll tell you the way I looked at that when that memo came out. I looked at that as Tampa having good faith that we're going to move forward And they were working on good faith to help ensure that they have all of the resources to make this project work. And at any time, they could withdraw that proposal. And at any time, if we didn't support this, we could have contacted Representative Toledo and told her that the board didn't support it and that the legislature doesn't need to do that. But the way I looked at it coming from Tallahassee, I would have been proactive. And if I was their representative and knew how important this was to them, I would have suggested that they be proactive to have those resources potentially lined up. Just because they filed for it does not guarantee that they're getting it. I didn't see it at all as some kind of preemptive way to work around us. Only because I know that process. I did not look at that as some kind of go around us kind of thing, and that's just my own personal opinion based on the last 6 years that I've served in the legislature.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, may I follow
yes.
up on that?
Commissioner Stark.
And also, if you listen, they said, if I heard this right, and I remember from our own appropriations, this is 1.6 off the top of the cost of the project, so when they go to ask for the funding, they get what they needed minus 1.6. So it's, if I heard right, it was 800,000 for the city of Tampa, 800,000 for cooperative funding versus the higher number. So actually that saves this region some of the cooperative funding pool money, which I frankly am in favor of. So
Good point.
I
Okay,
think I said that right.
we are on number 5. And is there a motion to approve number 5 in the first paragraph language?
Chairwoman?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that the existing language, that by the TAP project, the $350 million for TAP, it includes all aspects of the project that's listed in their own document on the exhibit, the one-page exhibit that describes the description and benefits of TAP. There's 7 different items, including upgrades at both Tippin and the Curran plant, transmission lines, the 12 new wells, the 37 wells for recovery, transmission lines, and so forth. I just want to make sure that those 7 items in the exhibit are the definition of the TAP project and what the $350 million pertains to. Thank you.
Absolutely. Reasonable request. I think we can put some language in here, can't we?
Well, we can, certainly, we can do that, or we can confirm to you directly that that is the TAP project, and that is the cost directly related to the project on its application. So that's why we have the directly related language that's already in there, so there isn't any extraneous projects that could come up. I agree with you. We could say as referred to, cost directly related to the project as identified in the exhibit.
Yes, that would work.
That would be, yeah, I agree.
With that, I move to approve number 5.
And that would be after the 350 million. That language
Correct.
would go in after the 350 million, right?
Correct.
Oh,
Okay.
put it here, but wherever you want to put it.
Second?
Yeah. With
Who
that
made the
addition.
motion?
I did.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Starkey, seconded by Mayor Marlowe, to approve number 5 language with the amendment, or with the added language as stated by the City of Tampa attorney. Okay. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Okay. We are now on number 6.
Madam Chair, item 6, you will recall, was an outgrowth of the discussion of when TAP became fully functional, what, if any, additional contributions would be due from Tampa when the debt reduction of the bonded indebtedness, whatever that balance was at the time. So the language that you see here was offered by the City of Tampa. I'll let Ms. McLean explain what the intent and the objective is here.
Board members, this language was to put a finer point on what the actual cost savings will be to Tampa Bay Water. We worked through the process that the board established in the ad hoc committee for reclaimed water, and that Tampa Bay Water contracted with a financial advisor who did the calculations based on the information provided by Tampa Bay Water, the city and its members, to estimate what cost savings might be realized by the members with the construction of TAP. That is reflected at the time with the information that was provided by all parties in the second sentence, which was an estimated cost savings of 34.7, excuse me. It is estimated, and we heard the board. So what we propose here is to come back at the completion and provide a report to identify what the actual cost savings is by the construction of TAP, and for the board to determine what, if any, further contributions at that time the city might be directed or requested to contribute as far as any outstanding debt service. But that will give us the most concrete information available, because we were all trying to estimate using different formulas on what the debt service is now, what it could be in 27, what it could be in 38. So what we're suggesting is let us come back to you and demonstrate the savings that the construction of TAP will provide to the members.
You would do that in the year and June 30th of 2020?
We would report back to the members no later than December 31st of 2028, which would be the completion of TAP, so that you would have all that information from Tampa Bay Water and from the identification of any kind of benefits that were arrived at and accrued to the members, and including the financial savings. And so that's why we're saying, instead of trying to project forward and ending up with an estimate, rather to come back at the end and demonstrate the savings.
Okay, we're on number 6. Questions?
I like that language much better, because then we know what numbers we're dealing with. I just had a question about when the accruing of debt would be calculated from. Is it from the beginning and all the debt that we all have together, or debt accrued from the beginning of TAP? And I felt it should be from the beginning of Tampa Bay Water. So I just, and maybe that's what you meant, but it isn't really clear in legalese to me. And I just wanted that clarified in this sentence.
Where in the sentence would you
Well,
like to clarify?
where it says, as of the date of this agreement, so I need a lawyer to wordsmith that this is it's the total debt, not just the debt since the day this agreement was started. That may be its intent. I just think some smart lawyer could interpret it differently. And I just want to make sure we have our legal language correct.
Commissioner Peters?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure and maybe I'm reading this wrong, and again, I'm the newbie and I'm not a lawyer, but does this language put any kind of ownership on Tampa Bay Water for debt service? So let's say that report comes back and there's added debt. Does that fall on Tampa Bay Water or on Tampa? And I do have a suggestion to add on the back that came from one of our attorneys in our commission that said that Tampa will pay to Tampa Bay Water any additional contributions to debt service as recommended by this report. So if there aren't savings, but there's additional debt, that debt then should fall on Tampa and not on Tampa Bay Water. And the way the language is written now, I don't think that's clear. But that additional sentence, I think, would make that clear.
Okay. Tampa, would you like to respond?
Certainly. With regard to Commissioner Peters' requested inclusion, I think what you said was as recommended in the report, which would
Yes.
be inserted after debt service.
Yeah, would you like me to read it again?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
So Tampa will pay to Tampa Bay Water any additional contributions to debt service as recommended by the report. So it would be based on that report that you all get.
That's better than what, if any?
Right.
Yeah, it's more detailed than just saying the 34.
But, but let's clarify when the date of the debt started, what, not from the beginning of the TAP project, but from the beginning of Tampa Bay Water, when we all jumped into debt together, right?
Okay.
Well, that could be in the report. If we could say, if identified in the report, instead of as recommended, it's a presumption that there would be debt service owed by the city, and the report would identify the offset of the cost savings of the city's implementation of TAP and any debt service that is remaining, so that the report could identify if the city owes any additional debt service. But the way that you read it, the way I heard it, there's a presumption.
But you said if recommended, and if you don't recommend it, then there's no recommendation.
no,
That's your report, so, right?
Sometimes reports don't give recommendations. I mean, they just give factual observations, and
Who's writing the report?
it depends on who's writing the report, too.
And
Yeah,
we can put parameters when we contract with that, so.
okay. Okay.
I think as identified.
They're writing the report.
The parties would be developing the report, which would be Tampa Bay Water and Tampa. That's in the beginning of the last sentence. The parties agree to evaluate the actual cost savings to Tampa Bay Water, so the report would be developed between Tampa and Tampa Bay Water. We wouldn't,
I'm good with that.
Last sentence here.
Okay, can you read that again, Jean?
it's actually in Commissioner Reed.
Okay, so, and this is where you're going to have to tell me where we insert the difference. So Tampa will pay to Tampa Bay Water any additional contributions, or you said inferred, what did you say for that?
If identified.
Any additional contributions, if identified, to debt service as recommended by the report?
If recommended by the report.
If recommended by the report.
Yes.
We could agree to that.
Okay.
Now, we still need to identify the time point of the debt service that we are comparing against. So that would be the debt service at that time or the debt service now. Yes, the question that was,
My question is, at what time?
Yeah, when
The
does
debt
it
from
start?
Beginning to when?
Well, if we look at how the Raftellus report was done, is looking at the debt service moving forward from this point in time. So if we want to compare what we're estimating to what the actual is, we would have to look at the debt service from this point in time in order to determine.
You got to speak louder.
I apologize. So the Raftellus report, the financial report that we did, looked at the debt service moving forward. I can't remember the exact date, but I believe it was sometime in 2019. So that's what they're using as the start date for the estimate. So in order to do a comparison to actual, we would have to use that as the start date for the estimate.
I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Quick question. The Raftellus report, so that's where we get the $34.7 million in savings? That was based on the amount of 350? Did this report take into account the co-funding from SwiftMed?
For the 350?
Yeah.
No, actually, the 350 is not included in the report. That's a cost that the city would pay outside. The Tampa Bay Water wouldn't be paying that cost, so it's not included in the analysis.
Great, thanks.
Okay. We're done with questions. Do we have a motion to approve number 6?
With those additions?
With the addition.
Thank you. I'll also move.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Peters, seconded by Commissioner Smith to approve number 6 with the additional language as noted. Is there any further comments or discussion?
Yeah, I need, so it's the language with the sentence that Kathleen added.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Further comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Okay, show number 6 passed. And we are now on the interlocal agreement.
Madam Chair, before you do that, I'm wondering if I might offer, you had 6 issues that your team of governmental lawyers brought forward, one of which was not adopted. And the discussion was around the Tampa-Hillsborough relationship, but it is, that issue originally arose over the concerns expressed, I believe, as early as October about moving the water to Polk County or to others.
That one was adopted. I just consulted with the attorney.
Oh, that's the 5 to
vote was
4?
5 to 4. The 6 votes is necessary on the entire MOU.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure we didn't leave something out and
Right,
leave an
I just wanted to make
unintentional
sure
result.
we're all on the same page here.
I have a question on 4.
Yes, Commissioner Oakley.
On 4, we were talking about going from 2 million to maybe 8 million or whatever it might be. Since that's servicing area inside the region, wouldn't it be best if any increase over that 2 million, could that be, and I would think Tampa Bay Water would have to be given their blessings for the city of Tampa to sell that? Could we also include in that price that's going to be paid by Hillsborough County for that water in those areas, that it include debt service?
Now, we did include, correct me if I'm wrong, a report that would come back to this board every year. And what could be in that report is the items that you just mentioned.
Right. I just think if you're going and selling into a larger area and you're going to sell more wholesale water, and that's for, in this area, in this region, for all our members, that water, that new water being sold should have debt service that come back into Tampa Bay Water, help pay our debt service, if possible.
Mr. Jordan?
Well, I'll defer to Ms. Saget, but I mean, if any member is purchasing water, how would that be? I mean, there's the true up and there's the settle up that we do every year, but that's the debt service is also included in that number. Could you address that, please?
Yes, debt service is included as part of the agency's fixed costs. So every year, we determine what we will bill each member on a monthly basis for their fixed portion based upon what they used the previous year. What the true-up relates to is when we get to the end of the year, if their percentage of use is different than what their previous year was that we billed them at, then we true it up to their true percentage for this year. So in years when a member might have been 20% the previous year, we'll charge them 20% for the fixed part, including debt, throughout the whole year. If they end the year at 22, then we true up that extra 2% and they end up getting charged 22% for all of the fixed costs.
But the water city of Tampa, does it have debt service in it, comes back to Tampa Bay Water? Because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about new water to those areas they sell into Hillsborough County.
Or the water that's sold by the city of Tampa?
Right, by the city of Tampa.
No, that's.
That's totally different than what she's
Yes, sir.
talking about.
Yes, sir.
The city of Tampa water, right?
Right. Yes, sir, it is.
It's not our water.
I'm sorry, misunderstood.
Yeah. But just seems like we should be getting, if it's a increase in volume and that water, it just seems like we ought to be getting debt service, all that new selling. I'm not saying don't serve those customers. We want to serve those customers, but I think they ought to be paying toward, the whole debt service that we all have. And that's just part of, I don't know how much that would even be, but based on wholesale sales, above your 2 million that you sell.
I'm very sensitive to the debt, I'll be honest with you. Have been since Carl Nurse was on this board. We were the two that were always conscious of how much debt do we have this year, going on. And I agree with you. I think it would behoove this board to wait to see what the first report comes back with, and then we could bring that up but I don't think it's changed much. I asked staff many times, has it changed much over the years? And it really hasn't changed much. Like I said, they're very old neighborhoods. They're established.
Well, I understand that. I'm
Not a
talking
lot
about
going on.
anything that was going to be developed new. That's what you were bringing up
The new-
earlier, the new developments, that water being sold, that's
Yeah.
in addition to that 2 million, the debt service coming back to Tampa Bay Water.
The language that was approved, if they're going to do something like that, they have to come here and ask first,
Right.
can Tampa Bay Water do it? And you have the affirmative decision to go, we don't want to, for any expansion like that.
Okay?
You want to add something more to it?
No?
Sure. I mean, we can reconsider it and add
sure.
some more language to it if you'd like.
I wouldn't know what to actually change the language to.
Tampa tells me they're going to include Commissioner Oakley's request in their report to identify that number.
Okay,
whatever
so what we
contribution.
need to do is, okay, so we can move to reconsider the vote on number 4, and then bring it back up for another motion to pass it with the additional language that in the report, it would include any increases in usage from new development. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so here's,
I want to ask myself a question. So I'm going to ask myself this question. What investment does Tampa Bay Water have in the city of Tampa proper or in these districts that we've been servicing for the last 40 years, 20 years or 30 years? What investment do we have? Can anybody answer that? None.
We're all members in a.
I understand that, but if you're asking us to pay debt service and you have no equipment and no infrastructure, no hard cash in it, how do you want me to pay for something you don't have a stake in? That's all I'm saying.
Well, there's another side to that.
I understand that.
And that is, it's my understanding, if there's any kind of emergency and you need to buy water from Tampa Bay Water, we need to supply it to you. So, in my county, everyone who gets water from the county pays a straight, flat fee for equipment, and then they pay for the use of water on top of that. So everyone is helped paying part of the capital expense. If you don't use any water, you're not helping to pay for any of the capital expense, and we are carrying it. So that's where I see a little flaw in this contract. Now, that's what was written into the contract. I wasn't here at the beginning. We did negotiate that $7 million that helps that, but that's a little bit where I get, So we gotta carry the capital expense for you just in case you need it. And you only get charged it if you use it.
Right. But that was your original agreement.
Yeah.
I
but
voted for the
I think
original
I
agreement.
think we're trying to fix, some little inequities
it's
here.
water under the bridge. Okay, are you done?
Yes, ma'am, I'm finished.
Okay, so can I get a motion to reconsider the vote for number 4? So we can bring up, to add some language to the information that's in the report.
Let's not open it. Let's just add a new line at the end.
You
so we
really
don't-
can't do
Really?
that?
Why? Isn't that simpler than opening up another can? So we keep moving forward.
Yeah, all you have to do is just make a motion, reconsider, and then do a new motion to include that language. That's all you have to do. It's real easy.
So moved.
Second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to reconsider. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Okay, now, make a motion to approve number 4, to include the new language plus language for information that will be provided in the report about any increases in usage of water from new developments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's the language.
I'll make that motion that way.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. Good? Good? Okay, we are on the interlocal agreement. We are on the interlocal agreement, and should we just start and go down this way? Or I'm sure everybody's going to have comments. Would you like to start, Councilwoman Rice?
Sure, I'll
But I think in order to start, we should have technically, you should have a motion on the floor in a second so you can start discussion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Marlowe, seconded by Commissioner Miranda. Okay, we are in discussion
motion for what?
to approve the interlocal agreement.
The
The MOU, I'm sorry, not interlocal, the memorandum of understanding as presented.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
As counsel for the board, I would highly recommend that no final action on the interlocal agreement, the MOU be taken today without an ability of every board member to see a final document. I know we've had a lot of discussion, but you have a right as a board member to see a final document and be able to see that your intent has been expressed correctly in the final document. This is a very important agreement, as this board well knows. And what I'm suggesting is that the motion, if it is to approve, that it be to approve in concept, so that staff can then finalize the document, circulate it among all member government staff, and then this board can decide whether to hold a special meeting, hold it in conjunction with your executive committee meeting, or come back in April and approve the final document. That would be my recommendation to you.
Okay, what's everybody think?
I agree with that,
Councilwoman
but with a
Moran?
special call meeting when the executive committee meets.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, with all members attending the
Right.
executive committee. So it would be a month from now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good advice.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on so let me just ask you all. It is 1:07. We can have our discussion here to discuss the concept and vote on the concept of what we've all approved up to this point, or we can save the final discussions till after you've seen the document
Good point.
with everything in it to go forward. I don't want us to have to go through this twice. I think we can take a simple conceptual vote right now. And we do have a motion on the floor, of course, in a second. We can do that. We can still proceed with that, but I'll ask you all what you would like to do as far as the discussion here and now, today. Or would you rather have it at the executive meeting?
I already missed my lunch.
What do y'all think?
I'd rather have the discussion when we have the document, the final document.
Final document.
And we can have all of the discussion we're about to have in context with that new agreement that we've all approved.
Yes, great. Is that an agreement, everybody?
I totally agree with that, and thank you, Counselor. I think that's a great idea, but I also want us to have the time to discuss not just how we do this, but should we be doing this, and to talk about some of the implications on how this impacts the ILA.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And just to that, and I think there, again, it's interesting that we're not talking about the interlocal agreement, but we've had, many of our boards have had discussions individually, right? not to vote on it necessarily, but we've had those discussions. And so I guess my only question about all this is why don't we bring it back in April to our regular meeting and giving us time perhaps, because I don't know how our schedules work out to talk to our individual boards again about what's been discussed and to the question that you raised about whether this is a good idea for Tampa Bay Water. We've got an agreement that might work if we think it's a good idea for Tampa Bay Water. So I don't see why the rush. Let's get it back here in April to a regular meeting and deal with it then.
Okay, this side, Commissioner Peters.
So it's my impression that there's a push to do this because of a deadline with SwiftMud.
Right.
So what is SwiftMud's deadline, drop deadline for them to apply for money? Is it next month? Is it 2 months, 3 months from now? What is the drop dead deadline for SwiftMud for a funding application?
Could you come forward and tell us what your timeline and deadline are? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you. The drop dead deadline to apply was last October for this year's funding. This recommendation is essentially being recommended low until this board makes a decision. We have another subcommittee meeting in April, which at that point, that subcommittee would decide what to forward to the entire board for approval. Follow me so far?
So when in April is that meeting?
So what I think I would have staff recommend to that subcommittee is to take this project and move it to the full board for determination.
With a medium
No, with the same recommendation, but then the board would have the opportunity to vote on changing that recommendation based on what you do.
Based on what we do in April.
Which the timeline on that vote with the big board is what?
Yes, what are the dates of your committee meeting and your next board meeting?
So the board will finalize the budget come June. We need it by June.
So we would potentially have till May then to have some kind of confirmation from this board?
Yes.
Okay.
And our next board meeting is April 15th.
Correct.
That fits.
Okay? Looks like everything's fitting together.
One more, sorry.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman.
And yes, it's very important to see everything come back in writing, but just to also flag that we still have a big issue to discuss during dealing with the emergency water supply that is in this draft of the ILA. So I just wanted to be sure and acknowledge that will be a big item to discuss next time we convene.
Okay. Okay, so I see some,
Supply and the.
could you, what is that exact item again?
On page 5 of the draft ILA, sort of towards the bottom of the page, it looks like, I would presume maybe it was the city of Tampa to ask to include that underlying language.
MOU.
Is that where I am?
Where are you looking? Sorry.
Hold on.
ILA, she said.
At the bottom of page 5?
Paragraph 4?
Yes, thank you.
I don't know where she's.
Of the memorandum? Where, page 5 of what?
Of the MOU?
No,
It's the agreement and memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay.
I believe, Councilmember Rice, are you
Yes.
referring to the one that the city of Tampa?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm
Oh, the
I'm on
city
the
of
document that the city of Tampa.
Yes.
Right, oh, okay. Oh, okay, yes,
It's a
we all
red
have
line, I'm
that.
sorry, it's the Tampa red line document.
H-
And in the cover letter referred to minor revisions that were requested.
Oh, I see.
But I'm sorry, on page 4, on page 4, about right here in the middle, it, in paragraph 4, it's referenced to section 3.08B.
Okay.
And it basically puts Tampa Bay Water on the hook for emergency water supply.
That's a little bit what I was talking about.
Excuse me?
I think that's a little bit what I was referring to.
It was exactly what you were referring to, Commissioner Starkey. I just didn't want that to get lost in the shuffle. That's a big issue. That's a big point of discussion. I understand we can take it up when we convene again.
Might I suggest that those changes that were in the City of Tampa's draft, that some of which Tampa Bay Water staff does not have a problem with, but we would be able to discuss those when the document comes back, either at Executive Committee or in April.
Okay, so I was hoping we could get all the issues and items out of the way to get some clarity and finality. Not all, I mean, we're never going to be completely done, but at least it wasn't in the issue outline form, so it probably should have made it to that sheet, the issues that we had concerns about. So what's your all's pleasure on what to do with this? Just wait till we come back for the final discussion?
Yeah.
But if there's going to be changes again, then I think we need to come to a vote. We've been working on this since 2017, and I think we're getting to a point where we need to either discuss it today and come to some resolution of what it's going to be. But if we're going to bring it up and make changes to the document again, then we're going to have more delays.
Very serious issue.
It's a very serious issue.
Also, on the exhibit, at the very bottom of the one-page exhibit, it says, upon completion and fully functioning of TAP, there will be no further obligation for Tampa Bay Water to supply or plan for supply water for Tampa with its current service area and projected population. Yet, of course, there is an emergency supply provision in the interlocal agreement, and then the Tampa Red Line version includes reference to that section 3.08B as well. So there's a contradiction there.
Okay, so if it's okay, can we ask, go
I was
ahead.
gonna ask you
Can
to
we
ask
ask
the
the
attorney.
city of Tampa to please give us some information so we have a baseline on this item?
Yes, and I'm going to work from the document that Councilwoman Rice is referencing, which is the strike-through and underline document that the city compiled and that Councilman Miranda requested to be distributed. The language that you see reflected in paragraph 4, waives its rights under and, was requested by Tampa Bay Water to the city of Tampa. Waives its rights under 3.08 means that all rights, including an emergency provision that says that if there is any kind of catastrophe that happens to our reservoir, that we would be able to come back to Tampa Bay Water. This is all current language in there, and under 3 conditions, including of which Tampa Bay Water would identify what, if any, water is available after supplying all of its members could potentially be provided to the city of Tampa in that emergency. Because the city remains a member under the interlocal agreement, waiving its rights was different than the language that was already in the agreement, which says that Tampa hereby acknowledges that Tampa Bay Water has met the terms of 303 and 308 of the ILA. For all terms other than emergency, which have not been come to fruition, we had acknowledged that Tampa Bay Water had met those terms and conditions. An emergency provision would not have come into play under that language. And so if that situation ever arose, as a member, Tampa could turn under those conditions back to Tampa Bay Water to see if any emergency water would be available. That's why you have the exclusionary language, because a waiver of your rights is certainly much stronger of all of the conditions under that section. The city would be glad to agree to remove waives its rights under and the except for 308B, because that would reestablish the agreement that had already been in front of you for a number of iterations. And then if an emergency arises, then the interlocal agreement continues to be applied to the city of Tampa. In the 20 years that we've been a member, We've never had that emergency as identified under the specific conditions in that clause.
I think the issue here is that what expense does Tampa Bay Water undertake to be able to provide emergency water supply? And of course, if anyone, God forbid, anything of any nature happened where we'd have to supply someone water, of course we would do it. But there's a difference between if you have it and offering it, and then having a contract that says you shall be required to do it. That means we have to budget for the MGD, the pipelines, we have to budget for it to supply what we can in the event of an emergency.
Respectfully, Tampa Bay Water would not have any additional financial contractual obligation than it does right now under the interlocal. This does not impose a super condition on you as a board, as an entity that doesn't already exist under the interlocal. What I was doing was making sure that in those emergency provisions, which do not include any kind of additional piping or pumping or sources, because no one can identify what would be needed in those emergency conditions, that is already not an item that is a budget item difference.
Aren't you relinquishing?
Commissioner Starkey, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I wanted our
I
attorney
thought it
to.
might be helpful if I reference the language that's in the interlocal dealing with emergency conditions, environmental or physical catastrophes and emergencies. And it really is a best efforts obligation on the part of Tampa Bay Water. Three things in the case of an emergency for Tampa: that the authority would agree to seek an emergency increase in our permit. Second, that all quality water not required to meet other member governments will be delivered to Tampa. So member governments come first, the other member governments first. And then lastly, the authority will use its best efforts to increase its supply of quality water. It goes on to say it is understood and agreed that the foregoing measures may not compensate for the shortfall. So it's a best efforts that is in the current interlocal agreement. And what counsel for the city was trying to clarify was that obligation would remain.
Okay. Commissioner Oakley?
Isn't that something normal for the Tampa Bay Water for that supply on emergency anyway? I mean, that's what we do, so,
That has, sorry.
as long as it's available. So.
Members? Yes, sir, that has been part of the local agreement, and we have supplied, as you know, anywhere from no water in a year to Tampa up to 16 million gallon a day average. And when they call for water, we will do all we can to get them water. And that's what we follow, and we've always, in 20 years, been able to meet that.
Yeah, that would be great, just carry on. I mean, that's not something I'd take away from anybody, any member, actually, so that needs to be there. Of course, it has to be there just during the time of drought and things are way worse than we think they are, but I would provide that to emergency service anyway.
Okay. Commissioner Starkey?
I'm okay.
You sure? Okay.
Well, then, just on the exhibit, at the bottom of the page, let's just strike that because it's not a benefit. We are legally required, and through the interlocal agreement, to do emergency water supply. So I don't see the point of this language of saying that Tampa Bay Water never has to supply water to Tampa again. It's not a benefit.
I don't recall us saying that here.
So I move that we strike that last sentence at the bottom of the exhibit, just strike it from the document.
Okay, so what does it start with?
Upon completion and fully functioning. It's one sentence at the bottom of the TAP, that one pager of description and benefits.
Where is that?
I think,
It's just,
what pages? Oh, description of benefits. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not in the city of Tampa.
It's not in the actual MOU. It's in the packet that was distributed
It's an exhibit,
from
though.
Councilman Miranda. Just in here.
It's actually in the board packet.
Oh, no, it's in the board packet. Sorry. I
I
thought,
have too many piles in front of me.
Yeah, it's getting bigger and bigger. You're talking about this last sentence at the very bottom.
yes. It's in the board packet, but it is, Mr. it is an exhibit to the MOU, so,
It is.
yeah.
In the past, we've had, I think, up to 6 million gallons reserved for Tampa. Isn't that right, Mr. Jordan?
I'm looking.
Yes.
Yes, sir, that is correct. We budget 6 MGD. That's kind of been around the average, maybe a little bit less.
Right.
But we always do that to ensure that we have the ability to deliver that water when they do need it. So yes, that is correct.
But it'll change that in a sense. It'll come down to emergency only, and that water will
Can
be
someone
held
hold up what
back.
that looks like? Because we don't know if we have it or not.
It's in the actual H1 item that was in your board book, that was given with your board materials. I think so. You can look. It's towards the end.
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I got that.
H1.
I don't have it. It's not in my H1.
Right after the page 8.
Not in my book, so my secretary didn't put it in.
It's in the H agenda.
You-
On the document.
After H for me is I. I don't have it.
You don't have it?
No, it goes from this to I.
Catherine, this is what they're describing, this
Yeah.
last paragraph.
We do have a motion on the floor by
Yeah, I think they just wanted to take a look at it.
Councilwoman Rice. Did we have a second, though?
Oh, I found it
Yeah, that's contradictory.
after the whole.
It is. Thank you for bringing that up.
I don't have it in my book.
So is a motion to strike that last sentence from the exhibit?
Need a motion, and we need a second.
I don't think she put that in
Second.
the book.
Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Oakley to strike that last sentence. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed. Show that passed.
It's contradictory.
So, just as a matter of process,
Weird.
we will be taking up the final draft of the MOU with the City of Tampa at the April board meeting, April 15th board meeting. Okay? Is that everybody?
What was the date?
April 15th is our next board meeting date. And we will, what we'll do is we'll take, yes.
I think among the member government lawyers, we understand exactly where you're going with this, but there are two base agreements. One is the one that Councilwoman Rice was just referring to that has the change in it. Is that the base agreement that you want us to build the others into?
I thought the base agreement was the agreement, the red line agreement that.
No, but that's, if that, I understand, if that's
Okay,
the one you want us
so
to
I
use,
guess
that's the
we
one
all
we'll
better
use.
come to
Yeah.
an agreement on which draft we're talking about.
I understand the one you're referring to, and now I understand which one.
What
we
would,
want from.
what would you suggest?
That's, I would suggest that,
Okay,
but
Are you using the H1 agreement or the Tampa agreement?
the Tampa agreement's the one that was referred to.
No, the only place it was referred to was in the discussion in the last 5 minutes. Everything
Right,
else,
but it's the only one that has red line in it.
well, yeah, but you have put all the items that need to be redlined in.
In the H1 MOU.
no, there isn't anything,
It would be, Pinellas County's attorney's suggestion that you work off H1, which was the agenda item, and the changes that you reviewed with H1.
Not
Never
Tampa's.
before with the Tampa agreement discussed. In terms of clarity, for me, it would be a lot easier to start with H1.
okay. Okay, so here's what we're gonna, if this is okay with the board, we'll work off the H1 agreement. It will be distributed among all the member government attorneys before it comes to this board.
Absolutely. Let me ask one final question, Madam Chairman, if I could. There are some issues in the draft that Councilman Miranda offered that are important to Tampa Bay Water. Don, do you want to go through those?
I think in the interest of time as well as moving us forward, we should defer on those. We can have discussions with member governments in the interim And if it's felt necessary to bring it back, we can bring it back to the executive committee for discussion.
Oh, you're talking about the red line
the-
items?
Yeah, the other red line
So
items,
there's-
which were intended to clarify, but we haven't discussed them, and the member government attorneys haven't discussed them, so I don't think we should discuss them at this point.
Well, but I want to include Councilman Rice's recommendation. That was discussed and
Oh,
approved.
that one was discussed.
Correct. It's the others that were not.
It's the others, right.
Okay.
I mean, but I actually went through the red line, and all the points, the 6 points are in this red line,
Yes, they are, yes.
but not the changes.
But not the red line change, right.
Right, got you. Okay. Lots of documents.
You know, whenever you put a final document together, there may be some scrivener corrections and errors that need to be corrected, and with your permission, we'll be sure to do that as well.
Okay, great. So we will have that, and we will also have I-1, which will be back also. So just to let you all know, I hope we'll be able to move right into discussion of H1.
Good.
Any questions, comments? Okay, everybody. Now we're going to J, and we do have 2 presentations planned, and I know we're going to lose some people at a little by 2 o'clock. Each presentation is probably about 15 minutes long, and we can defer those and go right to the finance and administration. I'll let you all tell me, okay, so I have a nod to defer those 2 items. Is everybody in agreement?
Agree.
Okay, thank you. So we'll defer J1, and we will defer J2, and we will now do K1 because we will need to approve that.
You may call that item.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. This is the report for the certified public accountants regarding financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. And Ms. Sager, are you going to present the auditors, or are you going to, I think we have Trey Scott from Malden and Jenkins to present the audit. Is that correct? Okay. Oh, he's in the bullpen? Okay.
The bullpen, we have a bullpen here.
Apparently.
Pinellas County baseball. Baseball feds.
Did you want to?
Just say move. Here he comes.
Okay.
I don't want to be sitting here all day.
All right.
Okay, so now we have them. Wade Sansbury and Trey Scott with our audit firm Malden and Jenkins will present the 2018 audit results.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Madam Chair, board members. My name again is Wade Sansbury. I'm a partner with Malden and Jenkins. Very happy to be here with you today. I'm also very happy to have the opportunity to serve this board. Let's see. We've got just a brief presentation for you all today. A little bit of information about Malden and Jenkins, a review of our audit opinion, some recommendations, and then be able to answer any questions that you all may have. M&J is a large regional firm. We serve governments throughout the Southeast, and our firm has been in business since 1918. We're actually 100 years old. We just came across that last year, so we're very proud of that fact. We are a nationally recognized firm. We serve approximately 450 governmental entities across the Southeast. We have 22 partners and managers, such as Trey and myself, who perform nothing but governmental audits all across the Southeast. We're dedicated to the profession. We do a lot of teaching with the FICPA as well as the AICPA. This year's audit report was a clean report. It's an unmodified opinion, and this is the type of opinion that you all wish to receive each and every year. And the report itself is obviously the representation and the responsibility of management. We perform the audit in accordance with all applicable governmental auditing standards, and the statements this year do present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the agency as of 9/30/2018. And we have some required communications that are listed here. There's also another document called our auditor's discussion and analysis that goes into a lot more detail. But those are just some of the specific ones that we always want to make sure we communicate to you all. One of the most important ones is that we indeed are independent with regards to the agency. Here's some information for the year end. Just want to point out a few things that water sales, as compared to over the last 5 years, have continued to increase. The operational expenses over the last 5 years have remained fairly steady, as you can see by these graphs. One of the key components of the overall system is obviously the water rates. Over the last several years, those rates have remained consistent. Additionally, the water revenues by member, as you can see here, there were no actual purchases by Tampa as of 2018. One of the obviously big components that makes up your overall audit is the audit of debt and capital assets. This schedule gives you a ratio between those two. One thing that I really like and seeing with this information is that the spread between the total capital assets and the debt is increasing because your debt is overall over the last several years has gone down. You're paying about $35 million annually to the debt service, and the capital assets have remained fairly consistent, even with the fact that we have about $35 million or $30 million in depreciation expense annually. This year we had no audit findings. We had no issues whatsoever or any kind of management points. Ms. Sackett and her team do a great job maintaining all the books and records of the agency. And they do a really good job with helping us get through the process, makes our audit go very, very easily and efficiently. One thing, too, just looking forward, the GASB has been very, very busy, as I'm sure all of you all are aware. We've got GASB's 84 and 90 coming up over the next few years. I believe only GASB 87, which is leases, a new lease standard, is really going to affect you all going forward. Although 87, I believe, is regarding capitalized interest, that is actually going to go away.
No, go ahead.
Going forward, so that is no longer going to be a component of your overall operations. One thing, too, to note that our firm does provide, we do provide free CPE to all of our clients, and we certainly hope that the staff members here can come to those, as well as any board members who would like that opportunity. Do you all have any questions for us?
Okay, members, questions on the audit? It's always good to do the audit last. You don't get a lot of questions.
Y'all been awfully busy today.
Yes, we have been. Any questions? Don't see any. And do we need a motion to approve the audit?
So moved.
To receive the audit, exactly. So we have a motion to receive and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Like sign opposed, show that pass. Great report. Thank you very much.
Can I just say one comment about that?
Yes,
I'm
please. I'm
sorry about that. I left the room just for a minute and thought there would be at least a little longer presentation, so sorry about that. I just really wanted to commend Christina and her department for the work that they've always done, but they continue to do. And it's not always, you just kind of take these kind of reports and the results for granted sometimes, and I just really want to tip my hat off to you and your department for the work that you do. Thank you.
Do a great job. Thank you all for you and all the staff. Okay, now we're on L, and I'll turn it over to, we're going to do elections. I'm going to pass the gavel to our general manager, and he will open up nominations. There's a process there.
Yes, and I think Mr. Oakley is not here. Do we need to wait for him to?
He
Oh,
left.
left, okay. All right, so I will declare nominations for the chairmanship of Tampa Bay Water Board of Directors open.
I would like to nominate Mr. Eggers, Commissioner Eggers, for chair.
Second.
Okay,
And I'll nominate Commissioner Sandy Merman.
okay. Any other nominations? Okay, I will declare the nominations closed, and we will vote in order of the nomination. And Mr. Eggers, Commissioner Eggers was nominated first, so I will ask Mr. Khan to call the roll for a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Peters,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
No?
Commissioner Starkey,
Yes.
Mayor,
No.
Mr. Miranda,
No.
Mr. Eggers,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Ms. Rice, and Ms. Merman.
No.
That's a first.
Okay.
Mr. Oakley was really smart dude.
I should call him back.
Okay, then I guess we'll, you'll call the roll on the other nomination for Commissioner Merman.
For Commissioner Merman. Commissioner Peters,
No.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Well, this
Mr.
is
Starkey.
This is kind of weird. I've never been in this kind of situation.
Me neither.
I need to know Robert's rules. I mean,
Do we have enough votes or not?
So you only get to vote for the person who's nominated. If that person fails, then other people
you
get
explain
nominated?
the
or-
Robert's
Yeah,
rules?
I've never been in this situation, I'm sorry. And Commissioner Merman's a fine chair, so nothing against you, Sandy. Typically, I'm used to rotating, so I don't know what happened.
Well, usually the chair of Tampa Bay Water, I mean, since I've been here, this will be my 9th year, usually they're 2-year terms, but
Oh,
it doesn't.
okay, I didn't know.
I don't want that to sway, but that's how the process has been in the past.
Well, if they're 2-year terms, why are we?
Yeah, why do
voting?
we vote every year if they're 2-year terms?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's my first time voting, or second time
The
voting.
interlocal says the chair serves for 1 year but can serve for two consecutive years.
Yes, right.
Oh,
Oh, so I guess that should have been put out
So
front.
it
Yeah, I
serves
didn't
for
know that.
2 consecutive years is permissible, but it's at 1 year at a time.
and is it historical?
No, it's consecutive.
No.
It is historical.
Okay.
It is
All right.
historical.
Yeah, it is, yes, it is.
Okay,
yes.
all right, well, that's it.
Commissioner Starkey.
Yeah, so we're voting on Commissioner Merman?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Mayor,
Yes.
You can change your vote.
Mr. Miranda,
Yes.
It was very confusing.
Mr. Eggers.
I didn't know that.
This is very strange. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm saying no, but I mean, it just seems.
Yeah, yeah.
Councilmember Rice.
No.
Weird. Well, yes.
Okay, what's the vote?
Then,
I said no.
no. Let's see, that was 1, no. I think I got 5-3, yes. That's what I saw. Is that correct? Would you confirm 5-3? 1.
Should we do a show of
Show of
hands?
hands, just make sure.
We should have done that in the beginning, I
Yeah.
think.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 votes.
And before, there was the 1 vote change was.
Okay, so now we do vice chair. So then I nominate Commissioner Eggers for vice chair.
Second.
That's just, can we just raise our hands? because
Yes,
everybody's gonna
yes.
vote.
Let's, show of hands for vice chair. 1, 2, 3. By unanimous acclamation.
What else is
That,
there? Oh,
that was probably more painful than. Kidding. It wasn't really. But.
Okay, so then we need the appointment to the Board Executive Committee.
Yes, ma'am.
And that would be somebody from Pasco.
That's correct. Yeah, about board policy.
Yes, by board policy, we have a third member government appointed to the Board Executive Committee, and that would be somebody from Pasco. So,
Nominate Commissioner Starkey.
Second.
okay.
We're debating on sticking it to Oakley since he left early. We're having an illegal, sunshine violation. No, that's fine, I'll do it. I live closer than Mr. Oakley. He's way over in Dade City, and that'll
Yeah,
be
that-
more of a hardship for him, so.
That would not be.
I will
supported.
continue.
Okay, all in favor of Commissioner Starkey being on the executive committee, raise your hand.
Well, I'm gonna tell him he's on it.
Tell him we thought about it.
And an alternate and all, alternate,
Alternate for,
Executive.
all,
I move Commissioner, Councilmember Woman Rice.
I would do that. That would be great. So all in favor of Councilwoman Rice being the alternate, raise your hand. Okay, great. Okay, then I need a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Motion, I have a motion and a second to receive and file. No one wants a second? to
Second.
receive and file? No. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Like sign opposed. And I could ask for a motion to adjourn.
No, wait, I have new business.
Oh, yes, we have 2 items. I forgot.
Well, mine is not probably what you're thinking, but I don't think I even have a computer that will work that. So for me, I don't use this. I don't know if any of you guys use this.
Need a thumb drive?
Nope, I just go by my book, so, and what's on my email. So I don't need that. Thank you.
Prefer a thumb drive.
All right.
And then what about, I have in my notes that we were going to do a separate motion for 6 votes on all.
Oh.
Councilwoman Miranda's item.
On all items? Is that what the motion
all-
was?
Well,
MOUs.
separate motion for 6 votes for all MOUs. I guess that's what would be.
Can we,
discuss it later?
yeah, let's get that, and let our attorneys talk about it and come back to us.
Okay,
Is that?
please do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can advise you right now that if you'd like, that the interlocal agreement specifies a majority vote on all items except for specific items where there's 6 votes required. So, and those 6 votes include transfer of facilities, and that's why 6 is required on this MOU. But a normal MOU that doesn't involve transfer of facilities, the interlocal agreement would require 5 votes.
And I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Okay. So we got the answer. That was quick.
Thank you.
We just for those presentations.
Any other business come before us?
We don't have to deal with it next time, do we?
That's right.
Okay, we are adjourned.